Thea in the DC Universe. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 276, Team Building. Now that the plan was in place, Sinestro was responsible for recruiting. Once hired, they would go to Earth to get Thea's stamp of approval, effectively becoming permanent employees. What would happen if the stamp wasn't there? The ring Thea had previously blown up was one example of a potential fate for temporary employees. As for what if Thea couldn't be found on Earth? Just wait and see. Would the constant influx of bizarre aliens into Star City scare Moira? The answer was definitely yes. Clearly, the location should be Coast City. Presumably, the tolerant citizens of Coast City wouldn't mind a Yellow Lantern Corps office right next to the Green Lantern Corps Earth office. The Green Lantern Corps size could also provide mentoring and guidance to the currently weak Yellow Lantern Corps. Perhaps the two corps could even work together to safeguard universal peace. All in all, Thea and Sinestro's first time working together wasn't exactly a pleasant one, but both showed restraint and avoided a fight, much to the disappointment of the cunning blue men who were waiting to see the action. Sinestro used the excuse that he was severely traumatized and flew away without mentioning anything about the parallax demon. He said, "Anyway, you, Thea, will take care of it. It would be better if you died." Thea couldn't be as detached as him. Although the Earth was hiding powerful people as numerous as the stars, she was still a little worried. The little blue man seemed to remind her kindly that with the speed of the parallax demon, it would arrive on Earth in more than 10 minutes. "Shouldn't you hurry over?" Faced with the little blue man's attitude of almost serving tea and sending guests away, Thea was a little depressed. No wonder Sinestro wanted to defect. Hal Jordan wanted to kill them all after he turned evil. These guys really made people feel bad. She prevented the Green Lantern Corps from splitting up and helped them so much, but she didn't get any rewards or benefits. Not even a word of thanks. These bastards. Thea was no pushover. Since meeting Batman, she hadn't learned much about martial arts or science, but she had become much more thick-skinned. Pretending not to notice his intention to chase her away, she continued to flatter them. "Dear Guardians, Earth's population is small and weak, and we're afraid we can't defeat the parallax demon. We will continue to enlist the Green Lantern Corps' strong assistance." Thea's earnest words, her voice gentle and moving, moved those who listened, some to tears. She automatically ignored the powerful figures of Superman and Diana. She described Earth as populated by children with cerebral palsy, their strength appallingly low. "If you don't send troops, we're doomed." But the Guardians had lived for eons, and weren't they just shameless? Everyone knew that. Several Guardians took turns explaining the Green Lantern Corps' challenges, the vast territory, the uneven quality of its members, the countless casualties, as if 100 or 80 Green Lanterns died every second. Thea was completely overwhelmed by their shamelessness, speechless. "Well, this is a war between the Yellow Lantern Corps and the Parallax Demons, so we can't get too involved. However, Hal Jordan is a great Green Lantern and can represent himself in the battle to defend Earth." Thea almost spat in his face. "What great warrior? Are you talking about Hal Jordan?" With just a few words, Hal Jordan was promoted to Great Warrior? That Great Warrior title is so worthless. Besides, Hal Jordan had already flown to Earth on his own. Your approval or disapproval was meaningless. Thea had finally experienced the highest level of shamelessness and was deeply impressed. She could only bid a silent farewell to the Guardians. The feeling of donning the Yellow Lantern ring was completely different from the temporary Green Lantern. Although it lacked most of its functions, the first ring was far more powerful than the subsequent rings, not to mention the temporary replica. A wealth of knowledge about space flashed through her mind. The Lantern Ring's teleportation was different from magical teleportation. Its theory was entirely physical, very similar to the Einstein-Rosen bridge theory on Earth. Both used gravitational field equations to connect 2 points to create a wormhole. What a fantastic theory. Thea waved to the Guardians and stepped forward into the wormhole. They passed 15 planets in a row, some desolate, others filled with bizarre creatures. Some bowed down in worship as Thea emerged from thin air, while quite a few attacked with various weapons. Thea didn't hesitate and continued teleporting, mastering the wormhole with considerable effort. When Thea returned to Coast City, less than 10 minutes had passed since the Parallax Demon's arrival. Using the Eye of Horus, She spotted Green Lantern Hal Jordan evacuating the crowds. Next to him was probably his girlfriend, Carol Ferris. The two were constantly trying to persuade nearby residents to evacuate, but unfortunately, most residents scoffed at his claim that a massive monster would descend from the sky in 10 minutes. This guy is so naive. How many people can you convince with such empty talk? A city of 7 million people, explaining everything one by one, would take at least 3 to 5 years to complete. Thea pulled out her phone and dialed the emergency number for the Sky Eye Society. What's going on? Amanda's voice rang out over the phone, and Thea felt a little relieved that this iron-blooded, dark-skinned woman was still reliable in this critical moment. Listen, Amanda, I'm pressed for time. I'll tell you this once, a terrifying monster is flying from outer space towards Seaside City. Remember that toad that knocked you out earlier? It was drawn here. I need you to immediately evacuate the citizens of Seaside City. Time is running out, please. Thea hung up, intending to call someone else. Uncle Bruce, listen to me. Thea recounted her story briefly, finally revealing her true purpose. Did you manage to get in touch with your friend in the blue suit and red cape from the last battle with the zombies? Seaside City needs him, and of course, you'd better come. Bruce Wayne, on the other end, though thinking this was a bit far-fetched, his strong mental fortitude kept him calm and confident. He believed Thea's words, saying that the person he'd contacted would be arriving soon and that he was on his way to Seaside City. Without seeing the Parallax Demon, the plot in the movie is completely useless. Calling in Superman and Batman, two of those nerds, should give us some confidence. If we can't defeat them, we'll just open a wormhole and run with our families. Some of the planets we'll pass along the way are quite habitable. She didn't dare contact Moira directly, but Thea still spoke to Felicity. Big alien monster. Felicity's voice rose an octave, heartlessly declaring she'd hack a few satellites to watch the live broadcast. Thea sighed. Felicity's mindset was truly different from everyone else's. A normal person would have been terrified, but what was she feeling? It was excitement, the kind of thrill that comes from being exposed to a secret. What a bizarre mindset. Chapter 277 The Enemy is Coming. Thea finished her duties and sat alone on the rooftop of an apartment building, awaiting the arrival of the Parallax Demon. With her yellow dress, black cape, and mostly covered face, she wasn't afraid of being discovered. But she was soon spotted. A Chevrolet was zipping along the sidewalk like crazy. Amanda, dressed in military uniform, opened the door and stared at Thea, hiding her head and tail. Even with her trained eyesight, she recognized her. She nimbly climbed onto the rooftop and asked, "Why are you dressed like that? Are you serious?" Amanda, having frequently interacted with Batman, knew that this hero's style was universal, each one covering themselves up for fear of revealing their true identity. But Thea, you're such a newsmaker. A few days ago, you were talking about destroying the temple, and now the alien monsters are here. Why can't you just be quiet? Look at your brother Oliver. A pistol is all you need to solve any problem. Thea could only briefly recount her story, explaining that there was no need to mention the yellow energy. She insisted that the impending monster was the product of your research on alien corpses. Believe it or not, when the monster arrives, all the casualties will be yours. This accusation made Amanda's eyes blaze with stars. She felt a bit guilty. She had previously dissected Hal Jordan's predecessor, the Green Lantern, and she hadn't anticipated the subsequent complications. She didn't take the evacuation of residents lightly, and immediately ordered her men to proceed. The AOC style was as brutal and ruthless as ever. Deafening explosions echoed in the city center, sending a flood of citizens fleeing. What did you do? With the battle imminent, Thea didn't waste her divine power. To get the answer, she turned to the dark-skinned woman beside her. We detonated a gas line near the main thoroughfare in the city center, Amanda said casually, as if she had stolen a turkey from a neighbor's house rather than setting off a bomb. Her subordinate whispered something in her ear, and Amanda looked a little sad. 17 bodies were found at the scene, and hundreds were injured. If you're giving me false information, I'm afraid I'll be shot. Don't worry, Thea is telling the truth. A large dark figure landed beside them. It was none other than Batman, fully armed. Using his bat cape, he leaped from a plane. Following him was Dick Grayson, the original Robin, now known as Nightwing, in his blue and black combat suit. My satellite detected a large figure in Jupiter's orbit. It's very fast. Batman was a little unaccustomed to operating in broad daylight, but he explained to Amanda anyway. Batman's credibility was good, and Amanda immediately believed him. She stopped talking about the execution and began frantically calling the government. Later, finding that inconvenient, she simply video-called several high-ranking officials. Thea said hello to Dick Grantham, now known as Nightwing. Nightwing, free from Batman's wing, looked much more confident than usual, though the 2 iron rods he carried seemed a bit out of place. Do you really know what a parallax demon is? These 2 iron rods look formidable, but can they really break a parallax demon's hair? Thea expressed her doubts. What's that coming? Batman asked. The satellite imagery showed the monster far larger than he had initially anticipated, but he still came without hesitation. Nightwing, having received the news, also arrived. The 2 of them, it could be said, were determined to die in this matter that had nothing to do with them. Thea had always admired ordinary heroes like Green Arrow and Batman. Those without superpowers but with the courage to step forward were true heroes. Those with a plethora of superpowers, even herself now, were at best heroes with great power and great responsibility, not heroes. She recounted her knowledge to Batman and Nightwing. Fear? I get it. Batman's lips twitched as he immediately recalled events from years ago, but he quickly suppressed the turmoil within him with a willpower. Thea watched this scene intently and sighed in regret. Batman's willpower rivaled Sinestro's, but it was a shame she didn't have the ability to create a yellow lantern ring, and even if she did, he wouldn't accept it. Where's your friend in the red cape? He should be nearby. He doesn't want to be seen by too many people. He could hear our conversation. Hearing Superman arrive finally reassured Thea. While Superman's magic resistance was often criticized, his courage was equally commendable. His low resistance was merely a slight disadvantage compared to his invincible Man of Steel. The most powerful superhero in history possessed boundless potential. Surely the Parallax Demon could defeat him? Hey, you're back on Earth? Is that Batman next to you? Do you know him? Standing on someone's rooftop in broad daylight, dressed in all sorts of tights, it was hard to avoid being noticed. Hal Jordan, though a little puzzled by her yellow outfit, recognized Thea and flew up with his girlfriend. Who's this guy? Batman and Nightwing asked simultaneously, their chattering Hal Jordan making them a little irritated. Thea could only introduce the others by their code names. Hal Jordan, for some reason, also introduced his girlfriend. Aside from Thea glancing at the future Purple Lantern bearer, Batman and the others acted as if they hadn't even seen him. Batman, always clad in black, now wore a darker expression when exposed. Are you saying this previous Green Lantern's arrival on Earth is the catalyst for all the subsequent events? Hal Jordan nodded obediently, then realized Batman had completely ignored him. Will Sinestro come? Where are the other Green Lanterns? Hal Jordan continued his interrogation, oblivious. What could Thea say? Sinestro would have loved to see Earth reduced to dust, and even better still, to kill Thea in the process. As for those old, naive people, Thea felt they knew Earth's true nature and were reluctant to send the Green Lanterns as cannon fodder. Thea shook her head and didn't respond to Hal Jordan's question. She sat alone, composing herself and preparing to absorb the Parallax Demon's energy. Indeed, as the Parallax Demon drew ever closer to Earth, Thea could sense the Parallax Book and the Yellow Lantern Ring's eagerness. It seemed that after absorbing the Parallax Demon, the book would possess new abilities unknown to the Guardians. The panicked citizens of Coastal City also continued to provide her with the ring's energy. Fear of the unknown, fear of the future, filled their hearts. But the absorption process was suddenly interrupted as an even greater section force descended from the sky, sweeping away the fear of Coastal City. The enemy is coming. Thea quickly stood up and gazed into the distant sky. It was the beginning of the month again, and a new author and new book urgently needed your support. Please vote and recommend. Chapter 278, People Who Joined the Battle One After Another, Extra Chapter for the Hall Master Huolian Hondan. A terrifying entity, embodying the emotions of all intelligent creatures, descended from the sky. On West Side Street, we'll be there immediately, Thea declared, not waiting for a response as she flew ahead. Batman and Nightwing, both incredibly courageous, took a running start, using their capes' gliding abilities to catch up. Carol, run out of town first. Don't hesitate, Hal Jordan commanded his girlfriend as he himself raced towards the battlefield. Thea, now the fastest of the group, was the first to spot the Parallax monster. It had to be said that this creature was truly conceptual. The combination of the Parallax monster's terrifying power and the unique life form of the fallen Guardian had created the behemoth that now greeted them. It occupied the size of an entire city block, its body shrouded in yellow and black smoke, its tentacles constantly absorbing the souls of the citizens who hadn't yet fled the scene. I am the bearer of the Yellow Lantern Ring, the fallen guardian. By the authority of the Book of Inspection, I command you to obey me. Thea now fully understood the extraordinary power of verbal evasion. A preemptive strike before the fight was truly satisfying, especially when the opponent was within her jurisdiction. Holding the Yellow Lantern Ring and holding the Book of Inspection high, Thea immediately caught the parallax demon's attention. From the smoke emerged an enormous head, somewhat resembling the Blue Men, only distorted and magnified 1,000 times. Initially, the large head was startled, but as he gazed intently at Thea's ring, his vast knowledge as a guardian enabled him to make a fairly accurate guess, and he burst into laughter. Those guys separated the ring? A bunch of fools who can't see the power. First, I'll take care of you and get the Yellow Lantern Ring, then I'll go to Away Planet to find my old friends. The parallax demon opened his mouth, and a beam of yellow light over 10 meters in diameter shot out. Thea quickly dodged. The beam of light created a crater in the ground, 100 meters in diameter and over 10 meters deep. What a shame. Thea couldn't help but sigh. If this guy had possessed any alien, she'd be able to fool him. Unfortunately, he possessed a guardian clan that had lived for hundreds of millions of years. These little blue men probably knew the lantern rings better than anyone else, so they were instantly exposed. Negotiations failed, so of course, a fight ensued. But fighting aside, the necessary politeness still needed to be delivered. Thea now had a good understanding of these lantern rings. Regardless of good and evil, right and wrong, she must not be weak in her demeanor. How dare you? How dare you offend me? Thea shouted, believing it regardless of others' belief. A giant of yellow light materialized. The giant wore Ares armor, but his appearance was identical to hers. Holding a spear, he stood tall and roared. This was the first Yellow Lantern Ring. Although Sinestro had taken most of it, Sinestro, you clearly took a small portion of mine. The remaining power far surpassed that of ordinary lantern rings, let alone that ridiculous makeshift one. If the temporary lantern ring's conversion rate for emotions is set at 50 times, then the official lantern ring's conversion rate is 100 times. The Yellow Lantern Ring Thea received has a conversion rate of around 150 times. The harnessed fear was transformed into energy. And the giant it manifested expanded dramatically, reaching a height of 100 meters. The pale yellow giant exuded a terrifying aura, inevitably absorbing the fear of the surrounding citizens. Two vortices formed on the battlefield. The parallax demon's advantage lay in its sheer size, while Thea's advantage lay in her stronger will. Both frantically absorbed the surrounding fear energy, preparing for the upcoming battle. Is this guy an alien? Is he vulnerable to physical attacks? The figure in blue clothing and a red cape was the first to approach Thea, hovering beside her. Superman was hurriedly summoned. He had heard Thea's earlier conversation with Batman Nightwing, but seeing such a smoky, physics-defying monster in person was a bit surprising. He wasn't sure if his attacks would inflict any damage. Don't attack that smoke, he's a physical being, Thea whispered to Superman, who wasn't exactly acquainted with him, but neither were they strangers. She rushed forward, spear in hand. Holy crap, even more powerful than me. Superman naturally knew Thea. Last time, he'd mistaken her for his cousin, only to discover it was a misunderstanding. Now, seeing her charging headfirst, convinced that nothing in the universe could harm his steel body except kryptonite, he charged forward without a shred of fear. Superman's speed was truly swift. Even though Thea had taken the lead, the two of them still charged head-on, reaching Parallax Demon in close proximity. The emotional spectrum was a flaw, emotions magnified 100-fold, easily escalating. Unable to control her urge to yell, Thea aimed a bullet at Parallax Demon's face. Superman's iron fist struck the other side of his face, but Parallax Demon remained motionless. A thick beam of yellow light shot out again, sweeping across the two of them. Superman dodged easily, but Thea, a 100-meter tall figure, couldn't. She materialized a massive shield and was knocked back over 300 meters before struggling to withstand the energy beam. My attack power is weakened. Is it because of fear? Superman flew to Thea's side, relieved to find her alright. He can control your fear. If your willpower isn't strong enough to suppress it, you'll definitely be affected, Thea patiently explained to Superman, but the way he pursed his lips suggested he feared many things. The power of emotion. Batman glided along, alternating his grappling hook gun back and forth, finally catching up with the fight. Seeing the massive monster shrouded in smoke, he realized his fists and kicks were useless. Hearing Thea's words, he lowered his head, thoughtfully thinking, and began to think of a solution. Thea still held out hope for Batman. Nightwing, following closely behind him, felt a little weak. It wasn't because he was afraid of heights, but rather because he was affected by the Parallax Demon's fear aura. Superman was also somewhat affected, but it wasn't clear if he was forcing himself or genuinely fearless. He acted as if nothing had happened, but those familiar with his subtle expressions could still tell he was nervous. Batman, on the other hand, remained calm, showing no sign of fear. Batman began to control the microcomputer on his arm, and the invisible Batfighter appeared in the sky. Bang! The fighter fired a number of colorless smoke bombs at the ground. This is the antidote I seized from Scarecrow. It releases a pheromone that makes living things happy. I wonder if it works. Batman said, firing his grappling gun at a nearby rooftop, ready to contribute his own strength. Thea couldn't stand watching Batman fight the Parallax Demon with his fists and feet. She ignored the Parallax Demon, and no matter how he threatened her, he couldn't scare her. So she controlled the Yellow Giant, holding a spear, and continued to fight. Keep asking for votes. Chapter 279, Joining Forces to Fight the Parallax Demon. Clang, Thea swung out a yellow materialized chain, binding one of Parallax's larger-looking arms and signaling the attack. Batman threw a batarang, observed the effect, and flew aboard the Batplane. Nightwing, helpless, could only join the ground forces rescuing the elderly and the weak. Thea and Superman were the primary means of attack. Thea held on to the chain with her left hand to prevent Parallax from escaping, while her right hand, a longsword, repeatedly stabbed at him. Finding this ineffective, she transformed it into a broadsword, severing many of the smoke and tentacles. The energy that left Parallax's body transformed into yellow energy. 60% was absorbed back into Parallax, while 30% was absorbed by Thea's yellow ring and the Book of Inspection. The remaining 10% vanished into the void. Thea felt a sense of gloom. A sense of intuition told her that the lost energy had found its way to Sinestro. I fought like hell, and he's still getting a promotion just by hiding on OA. How frustrating. The consequence of being unhappy is to chop even harder. At least you can get 30% after all. Her bravery honestly astonished Superman. With his sense of mission skyrocketing, he couldn't afford to neglect it. He took a deep breath and blasted his icy breath at Parallax. Batman, controlling the Batplane, coordinated with him, breaking off the frozen parts. Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern, joined the fray, materializing a machine gun and furiously unleashing green energy blasts at Parallax. While their combined efforts inflicted considerable damage on Parallax, Seaside City was plagued by a shortage of citizens and a prolonged period of peace. Amanda's explosion failed to deter the entire city, leaving many residents hiding in their homes, hoping to escape. However, their optimism caused considerable trouble for Thea and the others. No, this thing recharges quickly. Unlike Thea's Eye of Horus, Superman's X-ray vision consumed almost no energy. He was free to look around and was the first to notice the anomaly. After a long battle, the Parallax Demon continued to absorb the citizens' fear, and its total energy level actually showed a slight increase. If Sinestro were here, he would have ordered a massacre, but unfortunately, these heroes were all heroes of justice. Even if the sun rose in the west, they wouldn't do that. Can you release some stun weapons to knock everyone out? The Parallax Demon was so focused on absorbing fear that it didn't pursue the group. The attack was futile, and the group retreated to discuss countermeasures. Thea, seeing the frustration of the heroes of justice, offered them an idea. Great idea, Superman and Green Lantern praised in unison, but neither Thea nor they had any means of stunning. The three looked at someone who had jumped out of the Batplane. Damn it! Batman almost cursed when he saw the three inhuman beings waiting to speak to him. Did he even have such a weapon? He certainly has it. But what would the government and the military think of unleashing a weapon capable of stunning an entire city block? Why did you secretly develop such a powerful weapon? Countless inquiries from high-ranking government officials and the Pentagon would bore him to death, but the arrow was on the string and had to be released. To prevent further casualties, he had to continue taking the blame. He quickly swapped between the magazines on his fighter jet and released 3 high-intensity stun grenades into the city. A high-decibel blast echoed through the usually tranquil coastal city, the intensifying noise overwhelming the heroes. Thea conjured a soundproof room. Inspired by what she saw, Hal Jordan created one as well, and hid inside with a keen hearing Superman. His energy growth seems to have stopped, Superman said to the others. They were affected by the noise, but Parallax no longer had any sense of hearing. They were brazenly hiding in the small yellow and green house. He wasn't blind, so he was shattered. Let's keep fighting. The others joined forces again, and the Parallax demon's energy growth slowed. Thea noticed her own energy growth had nearly stagnated. To maintain her massive energy expenditure, she could only draw from the Parallax demon. She dodged attacks from various smoke tentacles, severing his limbs and absorbing their fear power. As she fought, Nightwing passed by on the ground on a motorcycle and tossed her a headset. It was undoubtedly Batman's. He answered the line. What's up? 5 National Guard F-22s are leaving and will be in the field in 5 minutes. Regular troops are also on their way. Amanda wants to know if we can defeat this guy. Batman was exhausted, fighting monsters while dealing with various issues. Is Amanda online? I'm here. Can't you take this big guy outside the city to fight? The Dark Commander's voice came over the intercom. This guy has no legs, didn't you see? He hasn't moved a step in our fight yet. What do you want me to do? Theo was also helpless about the demolition site. The destructive power of the few people was too great, and they couldn't control their energy at all. The only good news was that the reconstruction work would be arduous. Unlike Wayne Enterprises, which had long since transformed into biopharmaceutical research, and Luther Corporation, which mainly engaged in high-tech materials. As the only company in the country that still retained a large construction team, the future reconstruction of Seaside City would be a big cake for Quinn Corporation. At this time, Thea canceled a giant manifestation. Perhaps because the Parallax demon was possessed by the Guardian Blue Man, it could be said that it had basically no martial arts skills. Facing Thea's attacks, it did not dodge at all, and could only stab each other. Such simple and crude fighting ability made Thea feel helpless. No matter how clever her tactics were, they were useless against such a person. He could only materialize a massive dragon with even greater physical power, its claws biting and wings flapping. A shimmering golden dragon, it looked quite righteous, if you ignored the source of the lantern ring's energy. The enormous golden dragon grasped Parallax's body. Thea saw his massive head as a weakness, and regardless of the cost, it plunged its claws into him, desperately pulling the demon's head free. The heroes, no fools, opened fire on Parallax's head. Thea's dragon obscured Superman's attack angle, forcing him to lash out with heat ray. Batman's fighter jet also activated all its weapon systems, unleashing a barrage of freezing and incendiary grenades. However, their combined attack power was no match for Hal Jordan's. Every green energy blast, a symbol of courage, pierced Parallax's body, sending a visibly violent surge of energy through it. Green Lantern, don't stop. Your attacks are most effective against him. After accidentally getting hit by a stray green bullet, Thea realized the damage the green and yellow light properties of the ring could inflict, and she loudly encouraged Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan, always a crowd pleaser, was like a wild horse running free, firing even more recklessly. Chapter 280 Kryptonian Charging. But within 3 seconds, Thea was irritated by Hal Jordan's idiotic behavior. The Parallax demon, seemingly displeased with Thea's manifested dragon, lay on his face, its maw gaping, a stream of yellow energy rapidly brewing. Thea quickly maneuvered the dragon out of the way. Unexpectedly, the Parallax demon's face curled into a sinister smile, and 2 massive hands emerged from the smoke, seizing the dragon and flinging it at Hal Jordan, who was firing with gusto. The idiot paid no attention to his approach, and a barrage of bullets shattered a layer of Thea's energy shield. Idiot. Do you have eyes? Thea trembled with anger. Hal Jordan, realizing he had been too cheerful, quickly apologized. Thea needed to recover the energy drained by her own men, so Superman was assigned the task of providing a shield. Although the Parallax demon's fear intensified the closer he got to him, Superman charged forward without hesitation. No, Superman's irrelevant losses are too great. Amanda, can you get Scarecrow to the front lines? Earth's safety requires his expertise. Thea observed him for a few moments, noticing that Superman was primarily using his Man of Steel to withstand damage. His expression grew increasingly grim. She had no choice but to contact personnel outside the scene to see if they could remove this negative aura. I'll do it right away. Time passed quickly, and Amanda arrived at the scene, escorting Scarecrow, who was committed to Earth's safety, Gotham had its talents. This professional collected air from the scene and drew some blood, infected with the aura of fear, from two nearby agents, known as the most tenacious of the AOM, who held guns to his head. Then, with a look of excitement on his face, Scarecrow produced a vial of blue liquid that looked more like a potion than an injection and handed it to Amanda. "Only one?" Thea asked Amanda, who was also a little weak and trying to hold on. "The materials are precious, involving alien matter. The injection was valuable, of course, but who would use it?" The most suitable candidate seemed to be the large figure in the blue tights and red cape standing in front. "Can this stuff be drunk?" Amanda rolled her eyes at Thea. "It enters the bloodstream. How could you possibly not have this common sense?" Thea was incredibly knowledgeable. How could she not know? She even knew that Superman's body was impenetrable to earthly needles, but she couldn't tell Amanda that. For a moment, she was at a loss for how to explain this. Fortunately, Superman's good friend Batman came to her rescue. "I can give him the injection, but he'll be weak for a while afterward." Oh? Did Batman already have kryptonite at this point? Did Superman give it to him? He really trusted him. "I can help him regain his energy. You guys go ahead, I'll hold this monster off," Thea said, then materialized a golden armored giant to stop the parallax demon. "Can you restore his energy?" Batman drew out the words, seemingly digesting the information. Then, through his communicator, he instructed Superman to retreat and administer the injection. It looked normal, but one could imagine the page about Thea in his little black notebook would be filled with new entries after he returned. 2 minutes later, Batman signaled Thea to return, saying Superman was near death. "Green Lantern, can you hold him off first?" Thea lost count of how many times she'd slashed at Parallax, how many times he'd stabbed her. The fight, while fierce, was actually just a mutual drain of energy, leaving neither side vulnerable. Green Lantern Hal Jordan gave Thea a showy thumbs up. "Don't worry, I'm a real attention getter." Thea froze for a second. Did he mean he had a sarcastic face? What a rare talent. But could he really be trusted? As Thea hesitated, 5 National Guard Raptors arrived, unconcerned about heroes and villains, unleashing a barrage of missiles on the ground. She quickly erected her shield. Such absurdity disgusted Thea. In movies, she often saw the military recklessly wiping out both good guys and bad guys. If it weren't for the repercussions, she would have wanted to shoot down those planes. What a joke. Thea immediately handed the parallax magic to the attention-grabbing Green Lantern and his former pilot, and quickly flew to the rear. Seeing Superman again, Thea almost didn't recognize him. The sturdy man looked so frail, as if a gust of wind could blow him away. His once bulky blue bodysuit now felt a little loose on him. He asked Thea weakly, "Can you restore me? I've never heard of such an ability. The universe is vast." "Just lie down." Thea was impressed by these two. They truly were heroes of justice. They took Superman down without even asking her how. If she were the bad guy, she couldn't betray their trust. Although she didn't quite understand the principle, the Yellow Lantern ring clearly mentioned that Kryptonians could be charged with energy, so the rigid ring must be true. Extending his right hand, the ring pointed at Superman, a beam of pale yellow light connecting the two. "Amazing. It really works." The half-dead Superman immediately sat up and began absorbing energy. He felt refreshed, but Thea was less so. Superman's body, like a bottomless pit, endlessly absorbed the energy from Thea's Yellow Lantern ring. When the ring's energy level was reduced to 10%, Thea unilaterally stopped the supply. "Damn it. How could you absorb so much power? Judging from the intensity of your previous fight, you shouldn't have so much energy. Is your body's energy level insufficient?" Superman was a little embarrassed. "Sorry, I can't control it when I absorb it. But you're right, my energy level isn't always at its peak. Okay, my fear has subsided, and my energy has increased to 80%. Leave this giant to me." With that, Superman rushed to the parallax demon at a speed Thea had never seen before. He didn't care about the distinction between physical and intangible, and punched him. The air seemed to ripple with his punch, and time seemed to freeze. After several seconds, a violent explosion was heard. So strong, Thea took out a rechargeable lantern and charged the ring. Seeing Superman's extremely powerful punch, she couldn't help but sigh in admiration. With such great strength, one can really ignore many things. Regardless of the enemy's realm and state, he can crush them with pure strength. This is the future god of power. Superman ignored the fighter planes in the sky that included him, and beat up the parallax demon with punches and kicks. Each of his punches and kicks contained a strange rhythm. Thea's vision was not enough to judge the meaning of it. She could only feel that each of Superman's attacks contained great power. The parallax demon was obviously a smoke-like demon. Although he tried hard to attack, his attacks were not even a tickle to the Man of Steel. He was beaten terribly by Superman. Chapter 281 Reinforcements. Thea was studying Superman's attack methods, but she realized they were completely different, with no chance of learning anything from each other. With a sigh, she prepared to wait for Parallax Demon to die before absorbing his essence to deepen her ring's essence and the new functions of the Book of Inspection. But a fleeting glance revealed something unusual about Parallax Demon. "What's wrong?" Batman asked. "This guy's power is slowly increasing again," Thea said, a bit incredulous. After a closer look, she addressed Batman. "Could it be that some other citizen is feeding him that fear?" Amanda looked around frantically, as if a monster could leap from the quiet houses around them. Thea didn't answer. Logically, she didn't see Parallax Demon absorbing fear, but his ever-increasing strength was real. After being beaten so hard by Superman, he had gained some strength to fight back. At one point, Superman was nearly engulfed in a cloud of smoke, but luckily, he reacted quickly and, with a sudden burst of force, escaped through a gap in the smoke. Parallax seemed to have no solution for the ironclad figure before him, his energy attacks neutralized by Superman's heat rays. Unfortunately, the Guardian's knowledge of combat was too limited, and now he possessed immense power but couldn't reach Superman, which annoyed him. He visibly accelerated the pace of his destruction of surrounding buildings, attempting to create an open area where he could crush Superman with his sheer size. Where did this creature's energy come from? Thea opened the Eye of Horus and observed carefully, revealing that Superman's power was beginning to wane, while Parallax's had barely sapped any significant energy. How could this be possible? It's satellites. Satellites from all over the world are gathered here. Will the television broadcast affect the audience around the world? Batman suddenly blurted out, and Thea suddenly realized that it was indeed true. This news media, eager to watch the show, was constantly providing the Parallax Demon with new fears. "Amanda, contact the government and stop all broadcasts," Thea acted decisively. Regardless of whether it was legitimate or not, the satellite broadcasts had to be stopped. "Are you playing me for a fool? I'm not used to performing in public," Amanda, realizing the gravity of the situation, frantically called, but within 3 minutes, she said frustratedly, "No, many media outlets aren't controlled by the government, and the consortiums behind them won't bite." Thea nodded. She could picture those fat, chubby Jebel bosses, cigars in hand, refusing Amanda's advice. The typical indifference. "Since you lack the spirit of national unity, don't blame me." Pulling Amanda aside, she whispered, "Can we hack all those satellites?" Amanda, accustomed to lawlessness, was frightened by her and whispered, "Those are thousands of satellites around the world." Thea glanced at her and contacted her top henchman. Hack all the satellites in the world. Felicity, always incredibly bold, was even stunned by Thea's audacious move. After a moment's deliberation, she said, "But our computers aren't up to snuff. I need some help. Let me borrow the Wayne Enterprise supercomputer." "I'll find you some help." Thea casually ignored the ironclad fact that Batman was eavesdropping on her and blatantly instructed Felicity to hack the Wayne Enterprise. While finding help might be a challenge for others, it wasn't complicated for her, who understood the plot. Release Felicity's father, the world's top hacker No Smoke, to help her. "Okay." Thea turned to Amanda and asked, "Have you investigated him?" "I'll have him and a few other hackers help. Remember, this has nothing to do with the Eye of Heaven. It's a group of hackers working on their own." Amanda lied, trying to cover her ears, a lie she barely believed. A father-daughter reunion was impossible. One was still in prison, the other in Star City. Whether the father and daughter could coordinate and detect each other as familiar faces, Thea had no idea. The satellite signal on the display was rapidly decreasing, and the Parallax Demon's energy recovery was slowing. "It's working. Keep going." She was the only one who could observe the specific energy fluctuations. She instructed the remote control to not stop until all were blacked out. But when there were only about 20 signal sources left on the screen, Felicity's bitter voice rang out, "Some countries have internally controlled satellites, and the network is disconnected." Needless to say, these were the satellites of those unspeakable countries. What should they do? A serious problem lay before them. They could negotiate with them, and they were very reasonable. But by the time they finished their meeting and research, they were afraid the parallax demon would have already settled on Earth. I heard that the Watchtower space base launched by Wayne Enterprises has special shielding features. Thea looked at the serious-looking Batman. Batman almost bit his tongue. He pushed temples, launched bombs into crowds, and used supercomputers to hack satellites around the world. Now he wanted to use my Watchtower to cause trouble? Batman shook his head like a rattle, absolutely not agreeing. He wasn't ready to go all the way down this path of anti-humanity. Faced with Batman, who swore to his death, only he knew the control code. If he disagreed, Thea would have to find another solution. What should she do? Holding her elbows, Thea pondered her options. Perhaps this. She sensed the magic within her body and found no conflict with the yellow lantern ring. It's pitch black here, so you can't see anything, right? Faced with a pitch black darkness, ordinary people wouldn't feel any fear. After telling Batman to not fall, Thea boldly activated her chosen power, Eternal Night. The lantern ring's energy seemed to resonate well with Thea's magic, triggering it as well. A blanket of darkness enveloped the skies over Coast City and the surrounding area for dozens of miles. What's this? Everyone was affected. Without a moment to consider them, Thea turned to Superman. Superman was truly powerful. Even Ares' talent was weakened by over 10%, so the effect on him was definitely less than 10%. Perhaps possessing a male guardian, the parallax demon was strangely categorized as male, receiving the same debuff of less than 10%. Just when Thea thought the battle would end with Superman's overwhelming superiority, her psychic sensed danger ahead to her right. A several-fold smaller parallax demon clone emerged from the ground. Bearer of the yellow lantern ring, your time has come. A brilliant yellow beam of light barreled towards Thea. Dang, just as Thea was about to summon a shield to withstand the impact, a nimble figure descended before her. The figure, shield slung across their backs and a sword slung across their shoulders, crossed their arms in front of them, blocking the beam without retreating a single step. Chapter 282 Reunion, June monthly ticket bonus. The newcomer turned slightly, her delicate features adorned with sparkling eyes. Her features, imbued with classical beauty, only accentuated the high bridge of her nose and the crimson of her lips. Her long, wavy black hair cascaded over her shoulders, just as it had been yesterday, the time they roasted a wild boar together on Paradise Island, the time they danced under the moonlight in a small Belgian village, the time they'd been separated for a century after the war. Diana Prince, Thea Quinn, I've missed you so much, I've been looking for you. Before either of them could finish their words, they were replaced by a passionate kiss. This kiss contained all the emotions, the sadness of parting, the joy of reunion, and, most importantly, the everlasting love they shared. Puff, Batman, who had been working on some equipment nearby, was truly startled. His impassive composure couldn't hold up, and the power drill in his hand pierced his leg. Fortunately, the thick batsuit prevented him from sustaining any injuries. The two didn't linger for long. Although they had much to say, now wasn't the best time. What is this? Diana was a little surprised by the ferocious, smoky parallax demon. It looked incredibly powerful. There was no need to hide anything from Diana. Thea, regardless of whether she understood or not, recounted the entire story of the parallax demon. Fear incarnate, Diana clenched her fists, pondering. I'm full of courage, not fear, Thea nodded vigorously in affirmation. It was true. The lost Paradise Island had suffered heavy losses, perhaps leaving a rift in their hearts, consumed by fear. But now, the people of the lost Paradise Island were thriving, and with no one to challenge them, they could still talk for another 5,000 years. Diana was practically fearless. But who is that big guy? Is there anyone so powerful on Earth? The big guy Diana was referring to was, of course, Comrade Clark Kent. The parallax demon was cunning, exploiting the men's complacency. He not only attacked Thea, but also attacked the fighter planes. Those unfortunate fighters lacked Diana's ability to withstand the damage. One fighter, with a quick reaction, was hit in the wing, and the pilot managed to eject. The rest were left to die for their country. Remembering that Superman and Diana had a minor flirtation in their original time, Thea decided to nip it in the bud. To prevent Superman's super hearing, she set up a soundproofing barrier and bit Diana's ear, saying, "That guy's an alien." Diana's previously favorable impression of Superman's prowess instantly plummeted. In her mission to protect Earth, she had killed many aliens over the years, and her favorability towards them had almost reached negative levels. Although Superman appeared to be a friendly alien, her desire to befriend him faded after the battle. After observing the battle, she saw that Superman had the upper hand, but the Parallax Demon was cunning, repeatedly using unconscious civilians as cover to prevent Superman from launching a full-scale attack. "I'll go help him," Diana declared, drawing a sword remarkably similar to the one she'd used that day, and charging forward with her shield. Thea watched with concern, realizing Diana's strength had skyrocketed. If Thea had lost more than she won in their previous fight, now she couldn't even see a chance of winning. Diana's attacks weren't based on sheer strength like Superman's. Superman's attacks looked fierce, but they seemed clumsy, perfectly reflecting the essence of American street fighting: no defense, no evasion, just one punch and one punch to see who fell first. This irked Thea, who considered herself an accomplished fighter on Earth, as her fighting style lacked any aesthetic appeal. Diana's fighting style, on the other hand, was incredibly graceful, her speed, strength, and skill reaching the pinnacle of perfection. Each of her attacks varied in 3 or 4 ways, depending on her opponent's response. Thea's silver bracelets would occasionally surge in power, inflicting heavy damage on the Parallax Demon. "That's amazing. I have to keep trying," Thea murmured softly. "Is this woman your friend? And why is everyone affected by the night shroud you cast?" Batman walked over to her just in time, holding a strangely shaped gun in his arms. The muzzle was as big as a bowl, and sparks flashed from the magazine. What kind of high-tech was this? Thea glanced at it, bewildered. "Ah, it's a friend I've known for a long time," she pointed to the sky again. "This is magic. I mentioned it to you." Thea wasn't in the mood to explain her talent to Batman. Batman looked up at the sky. "The moon is still in its original orbit, but where did this moon come from?" But no one answered him. Thea recharged the lantern ring. It would be inappropriate to manifest Ares in front of Diana again. Fortunately, she had another familiar deity to manifest, the eagle god Horus. A massive condor, over 50 meters long and with a wingspan of 300 meters, appeared on the battlefield. Its right eye flashed with a captivating light, unmistakably the eye of Horus. Thea flew into the condor's body, controlling it. Like an arrow shot from a bowstring, she flew towards the Parallax Demon. Her hook-like claws snatched up a large cloud of yellow gas, piercing it into the abyss. After absorbing it, she launched a new charge. With the support of the 2 women, Superman finally felt a significant relief. He glanced at them from time to time. Thea's attack pattern wasn't unfamiliar, he'd seen it before. It was similar to the one behind him, constantly manifesting green weapons, except for the color of their clothing. But Diana couldn't help but catch his attention. This woman was too powerful. Superman was no martial arts master. He had no concrete idea of his own constantly increasing and decreasing power, only that it was immense. Therefore, even though Thea's discriminatory barrier reduced his strength by less than 10%, the sheer amount of energy within him prevented him from noticing any significant abnormality. Now he has lost 10% and Diana has gained 30%. The distance between the two, which was not that big to begin with, has been narrowed instantly, giving Superman the illusion that this woman is about the same as him. As Batman's good friend, Superman also has a bit of a chauvinistic tendency. He can't just watch 2 women beat the enemy. The serious Superman is terrifying. His power is almost endless and is growing every minute and every second. A lot of smoke on the surface of the Parallax Demon's body has been dispersed, and the body that originally occupied the entire block has also shown a tendency to shrink. Green Lantern, use your chains to create opportunities for them. Thea flew to Hal Jordan, who was materializing an anti-aircraft gun and was having a great time fighting the Parallax Demon. This guy really has no experience in team combat. As his mentor, Sinestro must be having a headache for a while. I remember everyone's monthly tickets. I continue to ask for votes shamelessly. Chapter 283 Carrot Danvers. Despite Hal Jordan's numerous flaws, his silliness, his chatterboxing, and his extreme moodiness, he was still able to listen to advice. He immediately followed Thea's instructions, materializing a vast expanse of green chains to securely bind Parallax. This guy's ring was truly remarkable. Seeing this, Thea couldn't help but think that while Hal Jordan's ring, inherited from Abinser, wasn't the first Green Lantern ring, as one of the Green Lantern Corps' greatest warriors, Abinser's ring must have been among the best of its time. Thea released the Parallax book, which had absorbed much of Parallax's yellow energy and acquired new functions. The chains, once decorative in appearance, could now be released. With a single command, without consuming any of Thea's resources, the book's energy would automatically activate, trapping the enemy. 2 chains, one green and one yellow, bound the Parallax demon tightly. Bang, bang, the sound of gunfire rang out. Batman, standing atop a building, fired at the Parallax demon with his bizarrely shaped weapon. Where the bullets landed, a rainbow-like cloud of smoke appeared. Parallax, previously chained and struggling violently, saw its resistance visibly weakened, a dull glare flickering across its fierce eyes. What a crazy piece of technology. Batman's thing is you never know what he'll come up with. Perhaps invention is his superpower. Since the enemy didn't resist, the others wouldn't hold back. Superman's casserole-sized fists hammered the Parallax demon's head. Thea and Hal Jordan also materialized various weapons, offering cordial greetings to the Parallax demon. Diana's fiercest attack was undoubtedly the most ferocious. Perhaps due to her auspicious events, the Guardian Silver Bracelet sensed her intentions, intensifying her fighting spirit. Unrivaled divine power was reflected through the sword onto the Parallax demon. Each strike was filled with the dazzling radiance of divine power, forcing the Parallax demon to expend vast quantities of fear energy to repair itself and avoid being shattered. I am the Guardian. My power and my wisdom will not be defeated by tiny Earth. Parallax's body was no longer as massive as when he first descended, its total volume estimated to have been reduced by at least 1/3. Thea's yellow lantern ring absorbed much of its essence, but she knew the true test was about to begin. The Green Lantern Corps has produced countless powerful warriors throughout its history. I've met countless geniuses in my long life. Let them play with you. Parallax took a deep breath, his massive body completely rooted to the earth. As he gathered power, the entire American continent could be felt shaking. Parallax completely abandoned defense, allowing the attacks to continue. One of his eyes was blinded by Superman's blow. It was unknown what energy Superman had imbued into his attack, but even with the use of fear energy, it showed no sign of repairing. Parallax's maw opened, spewing out countless meteorites and shattered buildings. A few streaks of green light were particularly noticeable among the rubble. Did this guy have this trick? Thea quickly inquired with Hal Jordan. Her yellow ring couldn't detect any green lanterns, but Hal Jordan's green ring's scan yielded the results quickly. Gemini Kovar, head of Green Lantern Sector 2214, disappeared 37,000 years ago. Carl Holtz, head of Green Lantern Sector 269, disappeared 110,000 years ago. Garrel Knight, head of Green Lantern Sector 1129, disappeared 2,100 years ago. 5 Green Lanterns appeared before them, still clad in traditional Green Lantern attire, though somewhat tattered. Their eyes were glazed over, their mouths slightly open. Their bodies had clearly been preserved by some special means, but their consciousness remained at the moment of their entrapment. The green rings on their fingers still flickered, proving they still believed they were in combat. Parallax laughed with a truly villainous air. These people are the prodigies of their respective eras, specially preserved by me. I often charge them, haha. Let them play with you. As if receiving a signal, several Green Lanterns reported missing mechanically soared to their feet, each finding their own opponent. Unsure whether to call it luck or misfortune, Batman, aspiring to be a great Earthling, also encountered one. With a whoosh, a powerful-looking Green Lantern unleashed an energy blast at him. The Master's martial arts training paid off. With a beautiful somersault, he dodged the blast and simultaneously swung a batarang, striking the Green Lantern with a violent explosion. Seeing this, Thea felt relieved. The Master's intelligence was impeccable, but the Earthlings were no match for these weaker fighters. Seeing that Batman could still hold his own for a few rounds, Thea decided to quickly finish off her opponent and rush to his aid. But Batman was reassuring, and the uneasy one was someone else. With a loud cry, Thea quickly chained her opponent and turned to look up, nearly popping her eyes out. Superman had been stabbed through by his opponent with a large green sword, falling to the ground almost unconscious. Shit, he was imitating Kryptonite's wavelength? He was indeed a seasoned warrior, no match for a rookie like Hal Jordan. Superman's opponent was about to strike him again, finishing the son of Krypton once and for all. While Superman possessed the gift of life and death, Thea couldn't bear to watch him die at the hands of the nameless individual who had been missing for who knows how many years. Simultaneously, she controlled her opponent with the Parallax book. quickly blocking his blows. Thea was going 1 against 2. The enemy's attacks were incredibly fast, and coupled with their experience and control by the Parallax Demon, the Yellow Lantern Ring's suppression of the Green Lantern Ring was completely negated. Thea also had to focus on the opponent controlled by the Parallax Book, making the fight extremely difficult. As for Superman falling to the ground, she couldn't care less, he wouldn't die. Huh? Thea glanced at the ground, and just as Superman was about to make close contact with the ground, a figure flew by and caught the falling Superman. A little girl? Thea launched a few fierce attacks, forcing the 2 opponents back, and then looked intently. With her blonde hair and plaid shirt, she looked like an ordinary city girl, 2 years younger than Thea. After scanning with the Yellow Lantern Ring, a large amount of data far exceeded that of an ordinary person, and a physique that could clearly be powered by the Yellow Lantern Ring. Thea knew it all. This little girl must be Supergirl Kara Danvers. She looked very young, without a combat uniform, flying here in ordinary clothes. She probably saw the satellite broadcast earlier. She should have some fighting ability, though. She definitely couldn't take on the Green Lanterns. But she could help her side contain the Parallax Demon. Little girl, the big guy's fine. I'll take care of that big boss over there, Thea shouted, pointing at the Parallax Demon fiercely chasing Hal Jordan. Leave that big guy to me, Kara Danvers gaped slightly, staring blankly at the opponent Thea had chosen for her. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 284 Supergirl's First Battle. The Parallax Demon towered, shrouded in smoke, its massive face tens of meters tall. The future Supergirl might have the courage to face any foe, but Kara Danvers, passing by on a whim, was still a little nervous. She couldn't help but peek at the Parallax Demon, her heart aching. Were these Earth defenders overestimating her? Was this the weight of her first battle, a task so heavy? Thea could see the obvious lack of confidence in the young Supergirl. She clenched her fists, a hint of eagerness, but more of a sense of nervousness. She thought she was nervous, but in reality, she was inevitably affected by the aura of fear. While dealing with the combined might of 2 Green Lanterns in midair, Thea also had to explain the battlefield situation to her. Exhaustion was simply exhausting. Little girl, can you hear me? Thea lowered her voice, fearing Batman and the various state agencies from a distance. Their super hearing was sure to pick up on her. To prevent any leaks, she activated the language function of her lantern ring, speaking standard Kryptonian. The sudden hearing of her hometown dialect truly surprised Supergirl. Kara Danvers left Krypton at the age of 12, then entered the Phantom Zone, where time stood still. She'd only been on Earth for 4 years. Although she looked considerably younger than the weathered Superman, they were legitimate siblings. How could she? Supergirl's expression changed drastically, and she turned to Superman. Superman had been sent to Earth as a baby, so he'd learned Kryptonian language later and didn't have a deep understanding of it. Furthermore, the shock of being struck by the kryptonite wavelength mimicked by the Green Lantern had been quite severe. With a waning expression, she said, "This is only my second time seeing her. Her abilities are strange, but she's not Kryptonian. You can hear me, right?" "Yes," you nodded. Thea's lantern ring was more than powerful enough to overpower the 2 Green Lanterns. With some magical assistance, she now had the upper hand. Noticing they hadn't responded, she asked again. Kara Danvers nodded quickly, her mind wondering, can you see from this far away? And surprisingly, Thea could. The Eye of Horus, aided by the yellow ring of fear, unexpectedly underwent a subtle transformation. Kara Danvers, feeling as if she were facing some monstrous beast, flinched involuntarily. To cut a long story short, these green guys are holding you Kryptonians back, as I'm sure you've seen. I need you to contain that smoke monster. The green guy he's attacking is on our side. The remaining 5 green guys are enemies. Don't engage them, just contain them. Got it? Oh, Supergirl said, telling Superman to recover. She flew to meet the Parallax Demon. While still oppressed by fear in her first encounter, Thea's Eternal Night had also strengthened her, making her overall strength even slightly stronger than usual. She pinned the Parallax Demon down and gave him a brutal beating, freeing Hal Jordan, who had been holding up his shield of courage. The grumbling Green Lantern was nearly collapsing. Originally, at a distance, the long-range fear attack hadn't had much of an impact on him. But Parallax wasn't foolish, and he'd pick on the weak. After releasing 5 Green Lanterns, he immediately targeted Hal Jordan. Facing his fear head-on, coupled with Thea's discriminatory barrier, he was barely able to unleash even 30% of his original strength. He struggled mightily. If Supergirl hadn't come to his aid, he would have been the first to die. She had originally planned to send him to Batman's aid, but seeing him nearly collapse to the ground, Thea knew he couldn't be relied upon. Fortunately, at the crucial moment, Diana unleashed her might. She snatched up a 3-armed Green Lantern with her lasso of truth and smashed his head off with her shield. The remaining one was blasted to dust by the powerful power of the Guardian Silver Bracelet. The 2 Guardian's supposedly strongest warriors were no match for her. Perhaps their energy had already been exhausted. The moment their lives ended, both the body and the rings turned to ash, dissipating across this earth far from their homeland. With her tactical prowess, she immediately discerned that despite Nightwing's support, Batman was truly struggling. Though outnumbered, Thea possessed a vast arsenal of skills, easily outmaneuvering both. She decided to support Batman first. With her support, Batman retreated completely, sweating profusely. Intensely focused, his tactics nearly exhausted, Nightwing, in an attempt to shield him, was pierced through the stomach by green energy, blood gushing out. Batman commanded the Batplane to transport him to the rear for treatment. Superman, Green Lantern, and Batman's 3 male companions all retreated panting, leaving the situation somewhat puzzling. Diana, the strongest, single-handedly took on a single Green Lantern, completely crushing them. Thea, in middling strength, faced 2 Green Lanterns, back and forth, ultimately gaining the upper hand. Supergirl, lacking experience and confidence, unable to even fire a heat ray, was severely beaten. Parallax's smoke bomb periodically emitted streams of yellow light, sending her careening. Supergirl's awareness wasn't lacking. She knew she just had to hold a giant back. Her modest flying abilities were rapidly developing, constantly disrupting Parallax's attack path, but she refused to engage him head-on. The equally experienced Green Lanterns abandoned their attacks, concentrating on entanglement with Thea and Diana. The situation was tense for a moment. Go ahead. With his mind completely blank, Green Lantern unfurled his transformation and threw his ring at Thea. Unaware of the ring's rules, he simply assumed that since Thea had worn a green ring before, an extra one would enhance her attack, perhaps even breaking the deadlock. But Thea, receiving the ring, was hesitant. She couldn't take random medicine, nor could she wear random rings. There would be plenty of perverts wearing 2 or even 7 rings in the future, but today, at this point in time, double rings was truly unprecedented. Thea struggled mightily with the question of whether to wear it or not. While fending off the onslaught of the 2 Green Lanterns, Thea wrestled with the question of whether to wear it or not. If others can do it, then so can I. An innate instinct told her she should. Finally making up her mind, she slipped the Green Lantern ring onto her left middle finger. The moment she put the ring on, Thea's mind buzzed. A corner of the world opened up to her. Tall, thick, and rough buildings filled the boundless expanse of her vision. While other lantern ring users might not have been able to discern what this was, Thea immediately determined that this was the end of this universe, the barrier of the entire world, the wall of origin. The wall was stained with debris, cosmic dust, shattered stars, and the mighty warriors who had sought the world beyond it. Yurga Khan, whose legendary ability to destroy the moon with his eyes open and entire civilizations with his eyes closed, whose brutality would have frightened Darkseid into peeing his pants, was stained on the wall, but the ring only briefly passed over it, making no attempt to reveal its secrets to Thea. Chapter 285 Help You Heal Again. Though it was a fleeting glance, Thea understood that the rings were telling anyone wearing them to journey to the world behind the wall and return the power of the emotional spectrum to the reservoir. Unfortunately, no one understood this until Kyle Rayner donned the White Lantern rings, entered the wall, and re-infused the power of emotion, thus averting the inevitable destruction of the world due to its lack of emotion. Every use of emotional power brings the world one step closer to destruction. If a noble person like Superman knew the truth, they would surely abandon it. But Thea, hey. The Green Lantern Corps, with 3,600 members, wouldn't that be enough? One more, one less, no less. The twin rings went surprisingly smoothly. Thea possessed immense fear, yet she had driven herself through it to reach her current position. It could be said that fear fueled her continuous progress. Fear and courage, like two sides of the same coin, operated in tandem, enabling Thea to achieve far greater things than she had in her original time and space. Fear gave rise to courage, and courage overcame fear. These two polar opposites intersected within her, completing a cycle of confluence. Amidst the violent turbulence, Thea completed her new transformation. Hal Jordan's Green Lantern ring was truly remarkable, only slightly inferior to Thea's split Yellow Lantern ring. Wearing both simultaneously, her combat uniform underwent some changes. The Yellow Lantern Corps insignia remained, but the original yellow and black uniform was now enhanced with green shoulder and leg guards. Her black cape was yellow on the inside and green on the outside, and her shoulder-length hair flowed freely in the air without a breeze. Her eyes were the most striking, one pale yellow, the other a deep green. Thea stared at the crowd. Supergirl was in imminent danger, and Superman, lying on the ground pretending to be dead, murmured something, clearly using his super hearing to teach her a lesson. Even so, Supergirl remained in constant danger, repeatedly escaping danger with her incredible speed. "Take care of you two first," Thea said, a hazy, colorful halo gathering around her finger. She tapped the Green Lantern's forehead. The pain on his face quickly vanished, replaced by a serene relief. He plummeted to the ground in a state of profound relaxation. Thea materialized a cushion to support him, then used the same method to take out the other. "Diana, don't kill him. Go back over there. I'll take care of this guy." After stopping Diana from striking the Green Lantern, the two, still in perfect harmony, switched positions, allowing Diana, the world's foremost shield warrior, to deal with Parallax and rescue Supergirl, who was nearing collapse. Gathering her strength, Thea repeated her old trick and brought down the last Green Lantern. "I'm exhausted." It looked easy, but the mental effort involved was anything but. Several Green Lanterns were possessed by the Parallax's fear, their minds lingering on the struggle they'd fought before their capture. They weren't villains, but heroes of their time. Being treated like the Walking Dead was a disgrace to their contributions to the universe. Thea, drawing on the shared emotions of the Yellow Lantern ring and the Parallax demon, instilled the green spectrum of courage into their hearts. Fear drives them to flee, while courage compels them to confront the situation. Though their bodies, transformed by the Parallax demon, had decayed over time, their souls were burdened. They deserved to be brought back to Oa and given a hero's funeral, not die on Earth, where their bodies would be dissected by evil scientists. Initially, Thea was indifferent, but the Green Lantern ring opened her eyes to new perspectives. She faced her inner self and prepared to face the turmoil ahead with a more proactive attitude, determined to prevent as many as possible. She removed the Green Lantern ring and threw it back to Hal Jordan. Wearing both rings simultaneously didn't significantly alter Thea's combat power. Instead, controlling both emotions became a heavy burden. "You're too exhausted. Leave the battle here to us. Take them back to OA. They're heroes of their race, and they shouldn't be buried here." Hal Jordan didn't know if he understood Thea's intention, but it was clear the three were on their last legs. Hal Jordan, now feeling a sense of belonging to the Green Lantern Corps, nodded emphatically, "I understand. They'll have a hero's funeral." Just as Hal Jordan was about to fly away, Thea stopped him. "Abinsu's body is in government hands. I'll do my best to get it back. If you see his family, ask them to give me some time." Abinsu was a figure who connected the past and the future. Hal Jordan was his successor, Sinestro was his brother-in-law, and the Guardian's greatest warrior, who knew what Earth scientists could discover with his remains. And since he worked with Sinestro, what if he came to Earth and found his brother-in-law and best friend's body torn to pieces? Would that be a disaster? Putting herself in his shoes, Thea couldn't accept this reality. Therefore, obtaining his remains as quickly as possible was the right thing to do. This inevitably required dealing with Amanda and even involving higher-level decision-makers. Troubled, Thea rubbed her head and glanced at Batman. Perhaps he'd have to be involved in this. Worried Hal Jordan might not understand the seriousness of the situation, Thea added, "We must keep Sinestro and Abinsu's family in check. You know how delicate the relationship is with Earth's upper echelons. They won't give up an alien body easily." "I need some time." Hal Jordan was deeply moved. Lantern ring bearers were known to be deeply emotional beings. He had no idea of Thea's concerns. He simply saw her as the embodiment of humanity's radiance, radiating supreme virtue. He patted his chest, promising to leave everything to him. He'd even begged on his knees to stop Sinestro. Then, With tears in his eyes, he and the three Green Lanterns soared out of the atmosphere. Glancing at the battlefield, Diana, a near-maxed character, and Supergirl were working well together, so there was no need to worry for now. Thea flew to Superman's side and, while the battle was still going on and the government agents couldn't get through, gathered the blood flowing on the ground. Superman could create clones from even a hair falling off, so this pile of blood could fill a whole nest. That was the downside of fighting on Earth. It was exhausting. What are you going to do with all this blood? Thea asked Batman and Superman. She had no need for it. It wasn't divine blood, who knew what it would become if she just absorbed it? Superman shook his head. It was contaminated by the kryptonite wavelength and couldn't be drunk back, so giving it to him was useless. Let me take care of it, Batman asked, and Thea handed it to him. Unconcerned about what he did with it. Let me heal you one more time, Thea said, looking at Superman lying on the ground like a dead dog. Thea was speechless. This big man had been injured by kryptonite twice in the same day. What bad luck. Chapter 286, Reminiscing in Battle. This time, Thea had learned her lesson, knowing Superman was a bottomless pit, capable of absorbing any amount of energy. She didn't overdo it, only healing him about 30% to 40%. Alright, you can fly now, right? Let's go outside the atmosphere and absorb some energy. Superman stood up, his crimson cape fluttering automatically, looking incredibly impressive against his tough face. You know us well? Is it because of that ring on your hand? Yes. Thea didn't bother to argue and flew off to fight the Parallax Demon. As she flew into the battlefield, she could still hear Diana constantly scolding Supergirl. You're using too much force, you're flying at the wrong angle, don't rely on your physical strength to block, be selective and dodge. Diana's babble of explanations about the flaws in Supergirl's attacks echoed the way Thea had taught her combat on Paradise Island. Although she could tell Supergirl was an alien, she had to admit that appearance was crucial. Her cute and adorable appearance, combined with Kara Danvers's passionate aura, was a stark resemblance to Diana back then. For the first time, the two of them worked together in unison, a surprising rapport. Manifesting a massive golden dragon, Thea charged directly into the battlefield. The ideal manifestation of the Yellow Lantern ring would have been Diablo, the dreaded demon of the Dark World. Unfortunately, that figure's image was the very least associated with justice, leaving the dragon with little choice. Diana, how did you get here? Thea asked, seizing a moment's pause as the dragon grasped one of the Parallax Demon's arms and blasted a sharp blade from its mouth, severing and absorbing it. I only saw you when I heard about your plans to build the Temple of Artemis. Diana used her shield to block the Parallax Demon's yellow beams. The continuous blasts diminished his power significantly. The silver bracelet struck the Parallax Demon in the face. I rushed to America and came here after watching the live broadcast, realizing that both shared a common source of energy. Thea's own destructive power was too limited. She drew her divine bow, attached Zeus's lightning bolt, and, leveraging the dragon's immense mobility, flew into the Parallax Demon's blind spot and unleashed a single arrow. The lightning's power was nearly unmatched, inflicting immense damage on the weakened Parallax Demon. A deep blue wound lingered on its face, the divine power attached to the arrow consuming its sphere energy. Where have you been all these years? A flash of yellow light flashed by. Thea forced the dragon to bow its head, while she leaped upwards, dodging the light and hurling a flurry of arrows through the air at the Parallax Demon. Africa, Europe, Asia, I've been searching for you. Diana drew her sword, its blade seemingly ablaze with fire, and swiftly hacked at the Parallax Demon. The two's rapport, chatting while fighting monsters, struck a tacit unease with a young Supergirl nearby, her neck wincing. As for the other Parallax Demon, who had been mistaken for a mere passerby, he was furious. Fighting me and chatting at the same time? You think I'm dead, and don't ignore me. I'll show you my true power. The Parallax Demon hadn't finished his words when a meteor seemed to fall from the sky. A blue and red figure descended from the sky, slamming into the Parallax Demon with a resounding boom. The force of the impact was so intense that it even shook the Earth's crust slightly. From the Parallax Demon's center, the shockwave rapidly spread in all directions, reducing every building in its path to dust. A single wisp of bright red drifted through the rising dust. This guy is too strong. Thea materialized a small house and hid inside with Diana. Supergirl followed suit. It wasn't that the shockwave was particularly destructive, even Thea, the weakest among them, could withstand it. The key was that it was incredibly dirty. Few women could handle such daily combat. Thea strongly suspected that Superman's cape's hidden function was to remove dust. As the smoke cleared slightly, the three of them came out to help, but within 10 seconds, they realized there was nothing more they could do. Superman, seemingly a bit overwhelmed by the sunlight, dragged Parallax Demon into a flurry of punches and kicks. His moves were crude, yet in his hands, they possessed an inexplicable quality. Each blow held a unique rhythm. Ignore. Simply ignore. He ignored the transitions between reality and illusion, ignored his smoky form, and even the Parallax Demon's attempt to confuse him by creating a clone within him, only to be spotted by Superman, who pinned down his true form and brutally pummeled him. I won't lose. How can a mere Kryptonian be my match? Superman's features were too distinct, and even a Guardian who had lived for countless eons should have recognized him easily. But the Kryptonians he'd imagined weren't this formidable. Was he mutated, or perhaps underwent some kind of transformation? He couldn't figure it out. Intense vibrations emanated from Parallax Demon, his massive frame straining like a spring compressed to its limit. Let's retreat. This time, the enemy wasn't bluffing, they were truly planning a powerful attack. Thea called out to the two women, starting to distance themselves. Fearing nothing but kryptonite, Superman fearlessly continued his assault on the Parallax Demon. Boom, a resounding roar, far louder than Superman's previous blast, lingered in their ears. A seemingly soundproofed house materialized, and the three of them entered. But the explosion faded just as quickly. Did this thing blow itself up? Thea scurried out, pulling out a parallax book and attempting to collect the escaping energy, but found the airborne energy to be negligible. Wait while I go and see, Thea said, then flew back. Diana, unsure of allowing her to risk her life, flew after her. Supergirl glanced around and followed suit. The three arrived at the scene one after the other, each awestruck by the sight. The smoky Parallax Demon that had once dominated the entire city block had vanished, replaced by a massive insect with an aged face. It was 100 meters long and 3 meters tall, with multiple legs and wings, and its golden complexion. Its human-like features were marked by the marks of time. Weakling, Shia said softly. She didn't mean that the Parallax Demon was weak in combat, but that the will of the Guardian that possessed it was too weak. You have to know that it was the will of the Parallax monster that possessed him, not him possessing the Parallax monster. Now only his head still looked human, and the rest of his body was completely assimilated. His own willpower was simply vulnerable. He bent his bow and shot an arrow at the insect Parallax Demon. He took out a parallax book and took a look. It was okay. The energy could still be absorbed. That's for sure. Let's go together, sisters. Diana didn't know what her book was for, but seeing that she cared a lot, she drew her sword and slashed at it. Now that there was no annoying smoke, the Parallax Demon, who had completely turned into a physical entity, had a much stronger physical attack power, but he would also suffer more physical damage. But Superman and Supergirl Diana were the kind of people who particularly liked physical enemies. Chapter 287, Confessions. Thea thought the Parallax Demon had lost his mind. Simply to focus all his strength on Superman, he'd given up his greatest advantage and used his physical form to fight Superman. This was sheer madness. But in a pure physical damage comparison, Thea was clearly inferior to the others. Even the frail-looking Supergirl could swing a stone pillar and pound a Parallax Demon with a clattering sound. While Thea possessed diverse skills but low physical damage, Supergirl, despite her immense strength, was somewhat immature. Superman and Diana fully demonstrated their immense destructive power. In less than a minute, the slightly overexcited Superman had broken 2 of the Parallax Demon's limbs. Diana's attack was similar, though more measured. Her great sword flashed with a cold gleam, shattering the Parallax Demon's carapace and wings. Thea, thoroughly irritated by these perverts, leaped to distance, opened the Parallax book, and began absorbing a steady stream of yellow energy. The lines on the book began to visibly become clearer. Superman spotted Parallax's weakness and sent his entire body flying. Diana descended from the air, stabbed Parallax's head with a sword, and then leaped back into the air. 4 heat beams from Superman and Supergirl pierced Parallax's body, blasting the fallen Guardian, who had lived for eons, to dust without so much as a final word. The battle finally came to a close. Superman, with a stoic expression, whispered a few words to Supergirl before leaving without a word to the others. Little Supergirl gave a shy farewell to the others and flew off to the other side. Thea began to gather the scattered fear energy. The Guardian's life structure was truly unique. Even with the Eye of Horus, Thea found no body parts. This was good news. She had no desire to dig deep to find scraps of such a large insect. When Amanda arrived with her forces, she saw Thea, having gathered the yellow energy, and Diana had taken flight. "Why are they all gone?" Amanda, arriving at the scene with a sullen face, was speechless. It was said that the area she was standing on was once the central square of Seaside City, once bustling with shops and traffic. Now it felt like Afghanistan. All she could do was ask Batman, who stood there like a javelin. Batman was speechless too. Several people had flown away, and the Batplane had taken Nightwing to the rear. He wanted to leave, but the area was a wasteland, devoid of even a meter-high building. His grappling hook was useless, and he was helplessly blocked by Amanda. "They're all gone," Batman replied grumpily. He vowed to research a device capable of flying when he returned. Next time, he could team up with these demolition experts and escape afterward. Not to mention Amanda, who was searching the battlefield, and Batman, who was trying to get home on Route 11. Thea brought Diana to Star City. Knowing that she didn't like being disturbed, or perhaps that Diana had a bit of a proud streak, Thea cast invisibility on them, allowing them to walk through the streets unnoticed. "That's the playground I used to go to when I was a kid. Do you see that bald guy over there? When we were little, my brother and I would play around in his backyard, and he would chase us for ages. Do you want to try that playground over there?" The two of them wandered the streets of Star City, unnoticed and uninterrupted. Thea kept recounting some of her past, from childhood to youth. And Diana laughed heartily as she told funny stories. "Playground? I've never been there before." Diana was eager to try Thea's suggestion, but still a bit reserved. Come on, but I'm afraid you won't be able to go in this outfit." Thea wanted to drag her to buy a ticket, but realized she was wearing armor, a shield, and a sword. She wondered if she'd be mistaken for a psychopath. Going to play games with invisibility didn't feel right. "Idiot. I'm not the same person I was when I first left Paradise Island." Diana glared coquettishly at Thea. In a flash, she changed into a black dress and pointed high heels. The waist-cinching dress and the pointed shoes made her legs look straight and long. Thea was speechless. This girl claimed to be mature, but in reality, she lacked common sense. This is an amusement park, not a catwalk. How can you even play dressed like this? To match her, Thea put away her casual clothes and changed into a dress that resembled a dress. The two of them stared at each other, a feeling of rivalry, each one aware of the undisguised admiration in the other's eyes. Their beauty attracted many a glance from the amusement park visitors. Even the staff, handing them their tickets, couldn't help but grumble. Are these two idiots dressing so flamboyantly for an amusement park? They paid no attention to the looks. Diana didn't care. Thea was simply shameless. Many adults with children watched blankly as the girls, dressed in long skirts and high heels, rode the various rides. If they were ordinary people, it would be fine, but these two were incredibly beautiful. Diana exuded a classical Greek beauty, a quality not seen in contemporary America or even Europe. Thea, even more so, tried her best to subdue her aura, but a hint of the power of fear still shone through the Eye of Horus, a dangerous and intoxicating aura. "Here, try this," Thea said, handing Diana a small cake. The Diana of this time was no longer the naive girl of her former time, who could be satisfied with just an ice cream cone. Diana took it, took a small lick, and her beautiful eyebrows furrowed. "Too sweet, really? Really?" Thea feigned ignorance, taking a delightful bite where Diana had liked her. "Hey, how dare you take advantage of me?" After a few small banter between the two, the distant feeling vanished, as if they were back on Paradise Island. Roller coasters and bumper cars were childish games, and the two of them didn't bother. Hand in hand, they walked through the bustling crowd. Occasionally, a few thieves, drawn by their sleek attire, were intimidated by Thea's invisible aura. Only after they were a good distance away did they realize their indiscretion, not daring to glance at their backs, and retreated from their distance. "What have you been doing all these years? Have you ever been back to Paradise Island?" They found a bench and leaned against each other. Thea placed her hand against Diana's, comparing them. Diana's fingers were long and powerful, while Thea's were nimble and delicate. In sheer beauty, Diana was superior. Her looks and figure were worthy of the god's blessing. She was the very embodiment of strength and beauty. In her radiance, even Thea's, ever-improving features, seemed inferior. Chapter 288 Circus Murder Case. Thea's advantage over Diana is that she's entirely contemporary, and her appearance enhancements are based on her original features, making her look more in line with contemporary aesthetics. "I've traveled a lot over the years," Diana said, her thoughts drifting far away as she surveyed the crowd nearby. "The glory of Greece is gone, and there's no trace of the gods roaming the earth anymore. Even the entire world of gods has vanished into thin air. I traveled from Europe to Africa, then to Asia, and then sailed to America." Diana chuckled softly, revealing the answer to Thea's puzzled look. "I also saw Audrey Hepburn." "Hey, I just borrowed her song," Thea said, a little embarrassed. Plagiarizing someone's hits always felt a bit guilty. "But where is she now?" Thea was about to ask Diana to introduce her, but suddenly realized that a century had passed, and she most likely wouldn't see her again. Although she didn't have supernatural powers, she was a great person. "I once offered to help her prolong her life, but she refused. I can only let her pass away peacefully, free from the torment of illness." It was clear that Diana and Hepburn had a good relationship, and Thea put her arm around her shoulders. "I'll be with you." Compared to the previous century of peace, Thea was extremely skeptical of the suffering Earth would endure in the next 10 or even 20 years. Faced with countless enemies, lifespan truly meant nothing. "What's your current job?" "I inherited Ms. Hepburn's foundation, and I fight for the rights of women and children." Diana seemed very satisfied with her work, her expression filled with a sense of mission. So that's how it was, Thea thought to herself. No wonder the Louvre couldn't find anyone. Diana met Audrey Hepburn through her Moon River and later went to work in poverty alleviation. What a wonderful fate. What a shame. Thea's eyes dimmed. She had originally wanted Diana to stay with her in Star City. While she didn't have high hopes for that, she still wanted to try. Now that she saw how self-reliant she was, she decided to put such words aside. Both of them had strong personalities, and there was no chance of compromise. Diana giving up everything to stay in Star City, or herself giving up everything to help the poor? Thea shuddered at the thought. It was so beautiful, a bunch of dirty black children grabbing her for candy. She'd probably pull out her bow and arrow. Fortunately, they had reconnected, so future encounters would be easy. The Yellow Lantern Ring's speed surpassed all others, and Diana's speed could exceed the speed of sound. Distance was no limit to their combined power. "How are the people on Paradise Island?" Thea recalled, returning to the present moment. Let Diana handle the poverty alleviation work, she wouldn't take her own money. Let's talk about happy memories. As expected, at the mention of Paradise Island, Diana's eyes lit up. It was her home, and due to clan rules, she couldn't discuss it with anyone from outside the island. But Thea had no problem with that. Though her family wasn't of good origin, she was a registered member of the family, so talking to her was perfectly acceptable. "My mother built a rice barn not far from the mountain. You remember that mountain? You threw your javelin so far back then, and Tiop has trained another female warrior, and she's really quite skilled." Diana rambled on about the plight of the people of Paradise Island, dwelling on every little detail, yet these trifles were more important to her than killing aliens or eliminating African warlords. Thea sensed a tenderness within her and pulled her into a hug. "Do you remember the god-slaying sword?" Diana whispered. How could she have forgotten it? The sword of Ares' death? This deceptive and god-awful sword now served Thea little more than a means of infusing her with ignition elemental magic during combat. It looked impressive, but it was practically useless. "Remember, my mother said that the god of fire forged two swords. One is your god-slaying sword, and the other is the sword of fire that I used in the battle just now. The sword of fire is just sharper. My mother said that your god-slaying sword is more powerful." Shia rolled her eyes at an angle that Diana couldn't see. Hippolyta, this old woman who talks a lot of nonsense, must have maxed out her talent for talking nonsense. The god-slaying sword is so powerful. Just as she was complaining in her heart, she saw a group of children running past the two of them, shouting to each other, hurry up, the circus is about to begin." Shia turned her head to look at Diana. "Have you ever seen a circus? Why don't we go and see it? What's so good about some lions and tigers?" Diana was a little puzzled. She was not afraid of those animals even if they were wild, let alone domesticated ones. "Let's go and see. If you think you're normal, you'll find it interesting," Thea urged Diana. This girl hadn't lived a happy life for 100 years. She'd waited for decades, and then had to go deep into the most miserable place on earth. She'd been too far away from joy. Thea had to make her happy again. The children didn't run far, and even if they did, the two of them could catch up. Following their footsteps, they arrived at the northeast corner of the amusement park. Entering the large circular venue, they could tell there weren't many spectators, but they were all watching intently. The show had already been going on for a while, and the two of them found an empty seat and sat down. The circus didn't let the lack of audience slacken their efforts. Everyone performed with utmost dedication, and the tamed animals performed their acts with great skill. An old man with a dramatic white beard led a tiger through 5 flaming hoops, drawing applause from the audience. Thea and Diana watched with rapt interest. They could easily kill a tiger, but taming one was far from their skill. Now, we welcome our warrior from Gotham, the man known for dancing with death. Boston Brand, show us his special stunts, the announcer roared excitedly, receiving enthusiastic applause from the audience. Soon, a man in a red bodysuit appeared on the stage, flamboyantly blowing kisses to the audience. Thea glanced at him and looked away. Trapeze artistry is simply thrilling for the average person, a thrilling adrenaline rush, a sport that truly blends danger with art. But for Thea and Diana, flying wasn't a difficult feat. It held even less appeal than the tiger jumping through a ring of fire. The raucous applause indicated the man's performance was excellent. Thea and Diana discussed the temple construction, but as they were talking, something unexpected happened. The man performing the trapeze art cried out in surprise. Then, like a ball of debris, he spun in a graceful arc from 50 meters to the ground. With a thud, a cloud of dust erupted. And the enthusiastic applause ceased abruptly. Detective Shia and Ziona are asking for your monthly votes. Chapter 289. He is the murderer. The man slammed into the ground, leaving no sound behind. The crowd around him was stunned at first, but then panic quickly replaced it, with countless people hysterically speaking words they barely understood. Thea was explaining the temple's architectural style to Diana. The exterior retains the original design, while the interior sculptures were decorated by people from Themyscira. The blatant incident unfolding before her eyes left her stunned. Holy crap, Thea's neck stiffened. It seemed that there were only 2 notable cases of circus deaths in the entire DC universe. Batman's eldest son, Dick Grayson, came from a family of trapeze artists. Both his parents died when he was young, prompting him to follow Batman. Another example is right here, right in front of us. The Dark Justice League member, codenamed Dead Man. Thea glanced at the spirit floating in the air. It looked a bit like him, with a bright red bodysuit and a pale face. It's rare for a normal person to reveal their soul after death, only those with exceptionally powerful psychic powers can do so. The guy who fell to his death had naturally stronger psychic powers than the average person, and coupled with his intense concentration before death, these factors combined to allow his spirit to manifest. However, the impression is that this guy was spotted by some kind of goddess of death after his death, and then transformed into a superhero who straddles the line between life and death. Thea wanted to ask, where's this goddess of death? Not far away, Boston Brand's spirit, dazed and dazed, was visibly dissipating near the stage. As the crowds of people moved around, his fading speed accelerated. Is there really such a goddess of death? To which pantheon is she from? Is she an alien from Earth? From this dynasty or a previous one? Thea now grew increasingly hesitant to trust her past memories. Seeing Boston Brand's spirit nearing annihilation, she felt it would be a shame to let it dissipate. Finally, she made up her mind. She extended a jade white finger and pointed it at Boston Brand, whose spirit was about to disintegrate. While Thea's willpower wasn't as strong as Sinestro's, her mastery of energy far surpassed those of the Lanterns. In Boston Brand's condition, injecting divine power into him would be useless and would likely cause him to burst. The correct approach was to allow him to generate new energy from within. What could unleash human potential more powerfully than fear? She injected a hint of fear wrapped in magic into Boston Brand's spirit. The spirit's gaze instantly shifted from distraction to terror, and he let out a heartbreaking cry. Unfortunately, the barrier between life and death prevented anyone present except Thea and Diana from hearing it. Thea had underestimated the impact of fear. Her fear would paralyze even a normal person. Furthermore, Boston Brand was in astral form, his mind intensely focused. Without the buffering power of his cerebral cortex, he faced a soul-deepening terror. His instantaneous mental fluctuations affected reality, and the spirit quickly fled. Thea only had time to glance at him, thinking he'd undergone some kind of mutation before disappearing. What was going on? Thea looked at Diana, puzzled. That guy seems to have transformed from astral form into new form, but I can't quite pinpoint what it is. While Diana's realm was high, she still leaned towards the physical realm, even surpassing Thea in some areas of knowledge. I think so too. It seems like a completely new mutation, Thea said, receiving Diana's confirmation, further confirming her own judgment. She had initially been puzzled. There were countless dead people in the world, some with powerful mental abilities, so why was Boston Brand the only one to have fallen into this state of neither life nor death? Thea couldn't help but ponder. Boston Brand had told many people about his bizarre experiences, but in subsequent developments, no one besides him had seen this mysterious goddess of death again. Could it be that I was responsible for his current state? Could I be the imaginary goddess of death? The terrifying law of causality frightened Thea. Then, thinking back to Ludendorff's life until 1937 and Steve Trevor's spread of the Spanish flu, everything she had been involved in seemed to have changed, yet the trajectory of change was consistent with the history she knew. Was she really involved in these events? What are you thinking about? Diana's timely voice interrupted Thea's repetitive reasoning about cause and effect. With so much going on, Thea wasn't ready to share her thoughts with Diana. I'm wondering who the murderer is. I'm trying to deduce them. Diana rolled her eyes. You're pretending again. Your eye of Horus can tell right from wrong, and my lasso of truth can make him speak the truth. So why is there any need for your supposed deductions? Thea felt the urge to facept him herself. Diana was absolutely right. Their abilities worked together seamlessly, infuriating the washing machine and embarrassing Hattori. Even the most cunning criminal wouldn't stand a chance against them. Mumbling, she opened the Eye of Horus, and soon a tall, thin, balding old man came into view. The Eye of Horus, quite unscientifically, told her that this man was the murderer. The killer had been found, but how could she expose him? She didn't want to be seen by anyone she knew in Star City. Just as she was struggling, her eyes lit up. A large group of familiar faces appeared. She cast invisibility on herself and Diana, hiding in the crowd to watch the unfolding events. Everyone, get out. Don't disturb the scene. The shouting came from none other than Thea's old acquaintance, Detective Lance of the Star City Police Department, Laurel's biological father. Among the male officers, one female figure stood out. It was Shadow, the beautiful young woman Thea had rescued from Purgatory Island. Dressed in a crisp uniform and white gloves, Shadow, after the accident examiner's examination, began her forensic work. The deceased is a 28-year-old male, 1.83 meters tall. The cause of death was a fall from a height. Detective Lance, experienced in cases like this, quickly determined that the trapeze artist's rope had been sawed off slightly beforehand, leading to his death during a performance. This couldn't be the work of an outsider, so he immediately gave the order. Take all these people away. Thanks to Thea's financial support over the past few years, the Star City Police Department has been well funded and recruited strong young officers. Bored in a safe place like Star City, these young officers rushed in and started arresting people at the command. Thea still had much to talk about with Diana and didn't want to see them waste their time. She walked over to Shadow and cast a silencer. Shadow, it's me, Thea. Don't look back, I'm invisible. Having seen many of her methods before, Shadow wasn't surprised. She continued to examine the body with meticulous demeanor. That tall, bald man over there is the murderer. Point him out. I have a way to make him tell the truth. In reality, Thea had no solution. Any spell took time, and it wasn't necessary. Under Diana's lasso of truth, no one could lie. Chapter 290 I Want to Be a Good Person. At Thea's prompting, Shadow's testimony against the suspect went smoothly. Diana's lasso of truth, tied around his calf, drew no attention. The man unloaded, recounting his inner struggles. Brand demanded half our circus's revenue. He's so greedy, he even signed contracts with 2 other circuses, triggering 3 bids for his own personal gain. He seduced the congressman's daughter and even asked me to apologize to him, bringing disgrace to the entire circus. The bald, lanky figure, the circus's director, loudly recounted his motives under the lasso of truth. It was clear he wasn't a bad man, devoted solely to the circus, selfless. It was Boston Brand's insatiable greed that drove him down this path of crime. Looking at the bald, lanky figure's determined expression, as if he had accomplished some sacred mission, Thea was speechless. The killers were all good guys, and the victims were all villains. Where did this overwhelming sense of déjà vu come from? Take him away. Detective Lance, after collecting evidence from various sources, confirmed he was the murderer. He felt a modicum of sympathy, but his duty was to escort the bald, lanky man away. Numerous police officers arrived and departed, leaving the previously bustling circus completely deserted, with only the two invisible women remaining. Come out. How do you feel about seeing your former boss's resentment towards you? Thea glanced at the empty seats. I never knew I was so annoying. Boston Brand, clad in a bright red bodysuit, had emerged from his horrific nightmare and seemed to be trying to find some of his living habits. He sat in the audience, his face buried in his hands. Sadly, he had no tears. Diana had a scholarly spirit in her bones. Whether it was her initial desire to study men or the heifer she later saw, they had always piqued her interest. Even now, centuries later, her nature hadn't changed. Seeing Brand's strange spirit, her bright eyes flickered. This guy's form is truly bizarre. Can I try the lasso of truth? Diana whispered. Thea rolled her eyes. You think this is a ring toss? But you can try. I'm curious how he got to this state. Thea wanted to know if there was a supposed goddess of death behind the scenes. She hadn't noticed Brand when he didn't show up earlier, only realizing his presence through a flicker of fear. He wasn't using invisibility, but rather seemed to have hidden himself in a different dimension. Diana had previously assumed Thea had some connection to this person and held back. Now, at her signal, she grinned and pulled out her lasso. With a swish, Boston Brand was ensnared, like a game. Tell me, who are you, and how did you get to this state? Diana, still stylishly dressed, exuded the air of a Valkyrie. Even dead, Brand was still terrified. Thea's fear had nearly killed him again. After finally recovering, he was unsure of where to go. After a long detour, he returned to the circus, witnessing the events that followed his own murder. Overwhelmed with emotion, Thea called him out. He was about to ask the only person who could see him what was happening to him, but before he could say anything, a gleaming rope was draped around him. What the hell? He'd been wandering around outside for a long time, unable to reach him, and he couldn't reach anyone else. And now, what the hell was this rope? Even more terrifying was yet to come. As Diana questioned him, he couldn't help but spill everything he knew. He mentally told himself to shut up several times, but his body, like a losing cause, spilled everything he should and shouldn't have said. This guy might be a bit of a jerk, but he's not a bad person. It's just that he's hallucinating. Diana asked a few more questions, retracted the news, and whispered to Thea. There are indeed too many people like that in modern society. The interrogation results were consistent with Thea's initial suspicions. Brand rambled on about sharing his life with a host of others, talking about the goddess of death, fallen angels, and discussions about the meaning of existence. Thea wanted to lash out at him. Fallen angels? What kind of supreme being is that? How could they discuss the meaning of life with a trapeze artist like you? It had only been 20 minutes between his death and his return. There was no goddess of death, everything was a figment of his imagination, a result of his intense concentration. It could be said that the only suspicious person he had seen since regaining consciousness was Thea herself. Did he create him because he knew everything about the dead, or was he his own creation? The complex relationship was overwhelming Thea. She waved at Brand. Forget it, it's nothing. Go on with your business. Thea and Diana were on their honeymoon and didn't want this guy haunting them. But her attitude left Brand feeling a bit shaky. I'm busy? What the hell am I busy? I'm already dead, and I want to be busy. If he'd been more detached, he'd probably have cursed. But now that he'd become neither alive nor dead, his mindset had changed dramatically. Plus, Thea's fear was so deeply ingrained in her soul, he hesitated to confront her. Perhaps Thea felt it was a bit inappropriate to just let it go. This guy's ability seemed quite useful, so she immediately said, well, your life form is irreversible. I'm afraid you need some time to think about your future. If you've made up your mind, you can come find me. She pulled her business card, complete with phone and email, from her bag. I can't reach the physical body, Brand said pitifully. Did this guy not know his abilities, or didn't have them, or simply couldn't? Thea rubbed her chin. Just then, an old man walked by the circus. Pointing at him, Thea said, tune your astral frequency to that man's. See if you can enter his body. Boston Brand was actually quite clever. After becoming a spirit, his mental energy became almost instinctive. He drifted over to the old man, prepared for a moment, and then instantly slipped inside. Brand, who was supporting the old man's body, looked down at his hands, as if thinking of something. He asked Thea, "Can I come back to life? Unfortunately, the other party's soul has been rejecting you. It's simply because this old man's mental strength is weak, while yours has been strengthened tenfold and 100-fold by your experiences after death. That's why he has no resistance to your possession. As you erode his body is also affecting you. If you don't come out for a long time, you will spend the rest of your life in this aging body." Thea combined her knowledge and gave him a rough analysis. Brand clenched his fists in anguish and jumped out of the old man's body. The old man couldn't see the others and thought he was just momentarily unconscious. After checking his body, he was still unaware and continued walking forward. Boston Brand's face was grim. "I have suffered the consequences of my evil deeds. Now that I am dead, I will not take away the chance of others' life. I want to be a good person." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 291, Meeting with the Top Management. Thea didn't care whether he was a good person or not, but Diana was already urging her on. Knowing he couldn't touch matter, she used her magic to toss the business card package in front of him. "When you decide what you want to do, come find me," Thea said, her voice as masterful as a master. Then, she walked away hand in hand with Diana, leaving Boston Brand standing at the entrance of the empty circus, starving. The two found a luxurious hotel and engaged in a friendly and passionate artistic exchange. The initial battle could only be described as a crushing defeat. Diana, now at the peak of her fitness, faced the weaker Thea with a crushing defeat. Thea was forced to resort to her clone technique, fighting Diana in tandem, thus maintaining her undefeated streak. "Will you wait here for me or come with me to see Amanda?" After their unspeakable bout, the two took a shower. Thea was blow-drying her hair. Abinsu's body still needed to be retrieved, or who knew what the Earth scientists would do with it. "Is that the department Steve Trevor later founded? I'd better wait for you. I don't want to get involved in human politics." Diana, also exhausted, lazily wrapped in her nightgown, flipping through a fashion magazine. She didn't even look up when she heard Thea's question. "But the soldier's body should be transported back to his planet for burial. I support you on that." "All right, then. I'll definitely defeat you when I get back." After an intimate kiss, Thea donned the yellow lantern ring and flew towards Washington. She had spoken to Amanda on the phone before, but seeing her again, she could still see her face was grim. It made sense. A third of Coast City was destroyed, and nearly 10,000 people were missing. Of course, missing was the official explanation, and politicians, instinctively inclined to shift blame, naturally needed someone to take the blame. While the blame was placed on the deceased Senator Hammond, the hidden blame fell on Amanda. Having previously held the upper hands in the power struggle within the AOM, Amanda was once again defeated, and the balance of power with Steve Trevor was once again established. After their battle, Thea and Diana had a wonderful day, complete with a friendly match. Amanda was chastised by the generals in the Ministry of Defense. It was her natural dark skin, otherwise she wouldn't have been able to handle it. When Leela told her Thea wanted to see her, she initially refused to see anyone. But then she realized she had to get on with her life. Compared to Batman, Thea was relatively easygoing. The appearance of the black-haired woman with sword and shield only heightened her influence in her heart. "What do you want with me so late at night?" The usually capable and resolute commander, now exhausted, forced herself to meet Thea. But Thea's first words instantly set her on edge. "Do you still have the alien body from the beginning? I'd like to claim it and return it to its home planet for burial." Amanda flatly refused. "Impossible. The military has taken it." "There's a lot of political maneuvering involved," Thea sneered. Political maneuvers? They were a joke in the face of power. But she still tried to convince Amanda that, despite her numerous flaws, she was at least patriotic. "I don't care about your political games. I just want to tell you that the corpse isn't a wild boar or lion from our forest. He's an intelligent being with family, friends, and children." Amanda remained calm, unmoved. Thea knew she had to give her some drastic measures. "He's not alone. Their organization is called the Green Lantern Corps. They have 3,600 official members like him, and tens of thousands more unofficial members. Do you really want Earth, America, To bear the wrath of such a large organization, well, Amanda hesitated. One alien had nearly killed her, so how could she survive 3,600? Still, she asked cautiously, how strong are they? Each individual can sink an aircraft carrier, and if you factor in their alien technology, then, the Green Lantern Corps' greatest strength is their numbers, but also their weakness. A large number of people naturally lacks unity, but there was no need to explain this to Amanda. Seeing her hesitation, Thea launched another powerful attack. If you want, I can take you to their planet. Amanda was genuinely tempted, but she quickly suppressed her naive thoughts. If Earth were the most powerful planet in the universe, she could go with 100 or 80 guards, but that was clearly not the case now. They had no family or connections. What if something went wrong and she ran away, leaving her stranded on the alien planet? How would she get back? Worried about Thea as a shady guide, Amanda shook her head and declined the day trip. We don't have the alien bodies, but if you desperately need them, I can give you a chance to convince a few generals in the Ministry of Defense. What do you think? Thea knew the battle in Coast City had captured the world's attention. Under such circumstances, the Sky Eye Society would have to hand over the source of everything, Abinsu's remains, and she anticipated the need for dialogue with higher authorities. She immediately nodded in agreement. Amanda made several phone calls. While her tone wasn't servile, it also lost the arrogance of the past few days. She hung up the phone and told Thea to leave with her. The black-haired woman holding a shield today is your friend, Amanda couldn't help asking halfway through the journey. Yes, Thea wondered. Anyone with eyes could see it, right? I've seen her photo, a group photo. Is she Steve's person? This question has been lingering in Amanda's mind. Nonsense, she's my person. Steve is nothing. Thea was particularly unhappy to hear this. If I hadn't been concerned about the impact of the timeline, I would have killed Steve 100 years ago. How could he still be alive today? Really, Amanda did not comment. Although her relationship with Thea was on and off, overall Thea was still her ally. If a powerful warrior like Diana could turn from darkness to light and come to her side, she would wake up laughing in her dreams. Without further ado, Amanda led Thea to the plane, landing outside the Pentagon. They took a special car into the complex. Thea was no stranger to the place. The Quinn group was undergoing a full-scale transformation, and Thea had brought along the scientific achievements of the Applied Science Laboratory, along with a touch of the atom's wisdom. Several product demonstrations had garnered widespread praise from defense experts. This month alone, Thea had visited the Pentagon 3 times, and the two sides had signed contracts worth nearly 100 million yuan. Several generals and experts in the Department of Defense responsible for new product development and manufacturing were familiar with her, and Amanda was even more familiar. Coming back here was like coming home. The special car took the two of them deeper into the complex. Chapter 292 Shia is a superhero? As they approached the conference room, even through the well-sealed door, they could hear a man inside, speaking in a furious voice. The voice sounded familiar, especially the way he kept mentioning Amanda. The iron-blooded commander, already sullen, darkened even further. He woodenly opened the door and walked in. Oh, I was wondering why the voice sounded so familiar. It was him. Upon entering, Thea saw a tall man shouting something. Considering Amanda's deadpan expression, she knew he wasn't praising her for her performance. The patriotic captain who had crash-landed on Paradise Island was now shrouded in a gloom. His passion remained, but he was no longer the same person. The erosion of time, the transformation of the virus, and his rank had risen from captain to colonel. It was fair to say that Steve Trevor had sacrificed far too much. The old man in the main seat interrupted Steve. Even the veteran politicians found this man's gloom unbearable. If it weren't for the Sky Eye Conference, he really didn't want to see Steve. Miss Quinn, you're so eager to get us to hand over the alien corpse. Is there some new intelligence, Mr. Minister, and all the generals? We know most of them. Thea glanced around and nodded slightly, only skipping Steve. To Amanda, this was a move to draw a line and get closer to her, but in reality, Thea and Steve simply didn't get along. She even had a slight dislike for Superman. In short, anyone connected to Diana was an enemy. Generals, you all know me. You may have some findings, but I'll still tell you the story from the beginning. You can't find any remains of today's alien monster. That's normal, because it's not a life form that our current science can explain. It has a life form we don't understand. I want to talk about something else today. The corpse you obtained earlier was that of a soldier. Excuse me, since you say we don't understand, shouldn't we study it? The lieutenant general interrupted Thea's babble, asking with a hint of hostility. This old man. Thea took a quick look. He was not only an acquaintance, but also a celebrity. Nominally in charge of military logistics, he was actually in charge of the Human Enhancement Project. She didn't know his name, but everyone called him General Lane. His daughter was the renowned suicidal Lois Lane, and he had a future son-in-law named Clark Kent. You couldn't just talk to a guy like that. You had to give him a slap in the face to convince him otherwise. Xia said with a smile, General Ryan, I was just about to say that this corpse is not alone. His legion monitors the entire universe. I am proud of the glory of Earth civilization, but in their eyes, Xia paused, in their eyes, the entire universe is divided into 3,600 sectors, and the Earth is just a planet in sector 2,814. The corpse we are discussing was in charge of this area when he was alive. Do you understand what organization you are facing? After I said this, in order to deepen their impression, Xia said, this corpse was the greatest warrior of their organization when he was alive. His best friend now controls the entire legion, so I hope that you can put the overall situation first and don't provoke a war easily. The best way to deal with them is to hold high the banner of justice, put yourself on the moral high ground first, and then talk about other things. Thea's words caused hesitation among the attendees. Over the years, the accumulation of alien technological artifacts that had landed on Earth was enormous, but research yielded very few results. The same was true for this corpse. If they could uncover something, that would be fine, but if not, they would be the ones to bear the brunt of the blame. They were all perplexed. I still don't understand. Even if we want to return the body, how do we do it? General Ryan, the future Superman's father-in-law, asked persistently. Knowing they would have this question, Thea had already prepared a response. She took out her yellow lantern ring and transformed. Of course I'll deliver it. Are you going to take a spaceship? Is that you, the yellow figure during the day? Are you also a superhero? Without the ring, you're just an ordinary person. General Ryan peppered her with questions. Thea was also frustrated. The broadcast had been broadcast to many people, and it was impossible not to attract attention. Since her magic wasn't yet exposed, the yellow lantern ring would serve as a good cover. She had a lot of information about herself, so she knew everything she needed to know about her superhero status, but never what she shouldn't know. Something unexpected happened at the Sky Eye Society's Haven City base. I was chosen by this ring and traveled to their planet. Later, I learned of an alien invasion, and so I hurried back. The ring chose me, not me choosing it. What did it choose? Because you're a woman, a sly-looking fellow asked with a mocking expression. Sia, mindfully memorizing his features, casually said, willpower. I have unparalleled willpower, but her words failed to register. What exactly is willpower? It's something ethereal. The ring is here. Anyone who wants to test their willpower can come up and enter the ring's halo. Sia removed the ring, stepped back, and gestured an invitation. Their eyes lit up instantly. What had they risked their lives to preserve the alien corpse? Wasn't it to crack alien technology and live a few more years? Now, that opportunity seemed imminent. Can I fly just by wearing the ring? A muscular man stood up and asked. Thea nodded. It wasn't that she looked down on them. Batman was the only Earthling capable of wearing the yellow lantern ring. Even if they were all tied together, they wouldn't be a match for it. Sure enough, the first person to try it barely lasted 2 seconds before collapsing within a meter of the ring. They had to resort to giving medicine and calling for emergency services, and it took a while to save their lives. Anyone else want to try? I've already said that being accepted by the ring will result in being transported to an alien planet for instruction. Think carefully. Thea smiled gracefully, her lips curling gracefully as she looked at the group. As expected, her words made those who considered themselves strong-willed instantly flinch. They'd only gone to alien planets after being overly satisfied. They'd become generals on Earth, but would they be slaves there? General Ryan remained steadfast. My subordinates are known for their iron will. Can we give it a try? Thea agreed. She wanted to see how this iron will fared against Sinestro. The soldier nicknamed Iron Will arrived quickly. He held a high rank, a major, and appeared resolute and possessed a strong sense of execution. He didn't hesitate at the command and stepped into the yellow halo. This man was far more formidable than the previous one. Holding out for a full minute before emerging, his face drenched in sweat. His eyes were bloodshot, his face distorted beyond all resemblance to a human. He pulled out a pistol and began firing wildly into the room. To demonstrate her normal status, Thea had already taken cover under a table. Chapter 293 Dr. Silas Stone. Amanda also hid under the table at the same time as her. This dark-skinned woman had been pointed at and scolded by the generals in the room all day long. Expecting her to save people in a critical moment was a dream. Now seeing Xia pretending to be an ordinary person and hiding under the table, the two of them tacitly said nothing. They did very well, and several people in the conference room were unlucky. General Ryan's Iron Will subordinates were firing crazily, and two generals were hit by stray bullets. One of them was the guy who had previously ridiculed Xia for wearing the Yellow Lantern ring because she was a woman. Now that she had the Yellow Lantern ring, other spells didn't benefit much, but when it came to the use of fear, Xia could gain new insights every day and innovate on her original spells every day. Seeing the guy with a bad mouth got shot, Xia didn't hesitate at all, and an improved fear spell instantly hit the target. The previously cowardly general suddenly gained courage and leaped towards the enraged Iron Will soldier. He was hit 3 times in midair, but his selfless charge was effective. He bravely tackled the source of danger and finally bought some time. By the time the guards outside rushed in and shot the Iron Will soldier to death, the general who had bravely saved his colleague had already died 5 minutes later. General Ryan felt like he was screwed. Such a horrible thing had happened to him. His cronies had shot and killed a United States general in public, an unprecedented tragedy in American history. He had enemies within the Department of Defense, and several of them were now looking at him with a hint of amusement. It was obvious with their toes that they were not holding back. Minister, Ryan ordered his men to shoot a respected colleague. We must seek justice for him, Mr. Minister, punish him severely, have him court-martialed. The gang finally got the chance to kick someone when they were down, and they were all extremely excited, ready to drag General Ryan out and shoot him immediately. Thea crawled out from under the table with a normal expression. She didn't care about the political infighting of the gang. Diana was still waiting at the hotel, and their goal was to fight until dawn. They had to get the body quickly because she was in a hurry to go back. She cleared her throat and said, "Everyone, does anyone else want to test their willpower? If not, let's get back to our original question." Yes, this is more important." When General Ryan was about to be forced into a corner, Thea's voice saved his life. He hurriedly spoke in support. He now looked at Thea with a very kind look, even more affectionate than his own daughter. The Secretary of Defense didn't want to deal with Ryan. The situation involved too many complexities, and a vague approach was the most appropriate. He then dropped the ball and said, "Let's get back to discussing aliens." Thea put away the ring, and the others breathed a sigh of relief. General Ryan was in charge of human enhancements, and few would have believed his men hadn't undergone any modifications. Even after the modifications, they'd gone berserk. Their initial awe of alien artifacts had turned into fear. The Secretary of Defense, in charge, pondered for a long time before speaking into the intercom. "Call Dr. Silas Stone to me." Moments later, a middle-aged black man in a white lab coat entered, writing on a tablet as he walked. "What do you want to talk to me about?" "I'm really busy." The black man, completely unconcerned with a room full of generals, rubbed his glasses, and said with a sullen expression, "Dr. Stone, we'd like to inquire about the alien bodies brought in from Seaside City yesterday. Have you found anything?" The Secretary of Defense showed little respect for the expert on alien technology, speaking in a stern tone, as if giving an order to his subordinates. "What's the serial number?" The black doctor glanced at him, then returned to his work. His disregard for the bean buns as solid food irritated the Minister of Defense. Damn it. He was so busy, how could he even remember the serial number? And what the hell was that number? It was just how your lab used it. Serial number K35H97. Finally, someone relieved the minister's embarrassment. A sharp-eyed major general quickly looked up the number the black doctor needed. After searching a few times, a muffled hum escaped from his thick nostrils. "This corpse is worthless. It's an ordinary carbon-based life form, slightly stronger than an Earthling's, but only to a limited degree. Judging by its cell division, it's roughly 40 years old, an earthly lifespan." Several generals immediately shrank. If it was only slightly stronger than an average person, there was no point in studying it. The Minister of Defense knew the military had a lot of extraterrestrial artifacts plundered from around the world. Since it was worthless, He might as well do Thea a favor and let her take it. Miss Quinn, if that's the case, you may take the body. The minister, still feeling a bit weak from the hail of gunfire, prepared to adjourn the meeting and go back to rest. He wanted to leave, but the black doctor wouldn't let him. Upon entering, he glanced at Thea for the first time and realized he didn't recognize her. Why are you taking it? This is my field of research. He assumed Thea was a colleague. Thea had already recognized him, the father of the future cyborg, an expert in alien technology research for the government military. When his son, Victor Stone, was critically injured, he used the lab's alien technology to save his son's life, creating the superhero cyborg. His technology lab, codenamed the Red Room, housed all the alien technology available on Earth, so it was understandable that he looked down on Abensu's body. But should she tell him about the alien war and the story of Abensu's brother-in-law and sister-in-law? Thea looked at the Minister of Defense with some hesitation. Dr. Stone, Miss Quinn's body is being transported back for burial. Her affairs have nothing to do with you, the Minister of Defense explained, clutching his forehead. No matter how powerful he was, he couldn't help but explain. Buried? Where are you going to bury her? Dr. Stone stopped fiddling with his tablet and, for the first time, looked Thea in the eye. The Minister of Defense was helpless. Faced with someone so insistent on getting to the bottom of things, he could only selectively tell the truth. Return the body to its original planet. Dr. Silas Stone was stunned for a few seconds, then almost jumped for joy. You can go to outer space. Can you take me there? Is it in the Milky Way? How many light years away? Thea and the Minister of Defense exchanged glances, each seeing the silence in the other's eyes. Thea's message was, get this guy out of here, the minister's expression suggested. Just give him a few words and you're done. Dr. Silas Stone completely ignored the strange looks from the crowd and excitedly ran over to Thea, nearly knocking Amanda over. He swiped a few times on his tablet and asked expectantly, do you recognize these words? Chapter 294 Red Room Laboratory. I know. This is a language from the planet Celia. It talks about, with the help of the lantern ring's translation function, Thea could understand the writings of every intelligent being in the universe capable of producing the emotion of fear, so the text before her was no problem. What's it about? Dr. Silas Stone asked anxiously. He had been deciphering these words for 3 days, working almost without food or water, but still had no clue. Thea glanced around, taking in the expressions of everyone in the room. She said, a little embarrassed, it talks about how to reproduce more efficiently. They use some kind of tool to be more efficient. Many words simply couldn't be translated into Earth's language, so Thea explained vaguely. Reproduction. The word reproduction entered everyone's auditory system, then filtered through their brains. The quickest ones looked at Dr. Silas Stone and smiled without saying anything, while the slower ones were still mulling over it. Dr. Silas Stone stared at the tablet in disbelief, then thought back to the cylinder he had been studying for 3 days. His son was already in his teens, so he understood it instantly. Damn! Where were the high-tech aliens? The sci-fi scene suddenly transformed into some indescribable object, and the huge psychological gap made him almost run away. He calmed down a bit. The only good thing about black people is that they can't blush. He coughed twice and said, then can you help me look at these texts? Xia patiently chatted with him for a few more words. It must be said that the power of the country is really great. Many languages are lost in the universe. Without the help of the lantern ring, few people can translate them. The people who collected information grabbed everything they didn't recognize. Xia even came across a stone tablet that described a powerful spell. It was a pity that he couldn't see the full text. They all claimed to know nothing about magic. She picked out a few alien ones to tell him about. Dr. Silas Stone, displeased with her perfunctory attitude, refused to let her leave. Xia had no choice but to unleash her ultimate weapon. The aliens are coming soon. Don't waste time. If anything goes wrong, can you handle it? The terrifying cauldron startled the Black Doctor, who wondered if it was truly that serious. But seeing the serious expressions of the generals in the room, he swallowed his doubts and took Xia to retrieve the body. Using official business, Xia finally entered the obscure Red Room laboratory. Using her light ring, she silently surveyed the surroundings. There were many valuable items, but most were technology from nearby star regions. The particle amplifier, sadly only half intact. The strongly magnetized rotating core power amplifier had a large burn hole at the input port. There was no sign of the white noise blaster, the weapon that would later become Cyborg's fame. Many items were haphazardly piled together with no discernible purpose, making the space seem rather cramped. Thea peered around, noticing that most of the items were discarded, with few truly usable items. Was this the Red Room? You must be kidding me, she asked, puzzled. Is this your laboratory? Dr. Stone replied casually. Yes, but it won't be soon, There was more to this. Thea turned to look at General Ryan, who had followed. Their laboratory is overexpensive and unproductive. The Department of Defense has ordered them to move out of Washington and relocate to another city. This space will be reserved for more valuable research teams. General Ryan's lips curled slightly, revealing a hint of pride. Thea nodded, saying nothing more. The general situation was easy to guess. General Ryan simply wanted to launch his own human enhancement experiments, so he denigrated Dr. Stone, who had been producing no results, and even had him kicked out of the Pentagon. The annual research funding from the government remained the same, but with less money, everyone could eat more. If nothing unexpected happened, Dr. Stone would lead his team to Detroit to rebuild the Red Room laboratory, freeing himself from Washington's control. His research funding would undoubtedly be drastically cut. Could the Quinn Group inject capital and share in the profits? All this was still far off. Thea showed no urgency, and followed calmly inside. The search for Abinsu's body was anything but smooth. The body had been dismembered into 108 pieces, like a jigsaw puzzle. 7 or 8 researchers toiled for half an hour before finally, barely, a humanoid figure could be assembled on the table. Looking at the 100-plus pieces, Thea looked at General Lane dejectedly. General, is it really okay for me to transport a body like this? General Lane, the future Superman's father-in-law, kept rubbing his head, stumbling over his words. Putting herself in his shoes, she realized that if Russia and the unspeakable country were torn into over 100 pieces and sent them back to the United States, it certainly wasn't meant to convey a sense of peace and brotherhood. Who of you tore him apart like this? What am I supposed to do? Send someone to come and explain it to me. Thea had plenty of options for dealing with the body. A few random magic circles wouldn't bring the dead back to life, but restoring flesh and blood, making it appear intact, was certainly possible. But she wasn't going to leave easily. She needed at least some benefits. General Ryan remained silent, as if he hadn't heard. Several lab technicians whispered to each other. Explain? To whom? Where? Dr. Stone quietly explained the situation to them. His lab employed highly motivated individuals, and their eyes lit up at the prospect of traveling to outer space. But the harsh reality quickly dampened their spirits. They stared at Abinsu, dismembered into 10 by 10 pieces. Even in this state, can this be solved with just explanation, taking a corpse like this to outer space? Are you sure you're returning a warrior's body, not declaring war? They waved their hands frantically. One said they were going back home to get married next month, another said their father had just died and they couldn't leave. Silas Stone was honestly tempted, but a few loyal students held him back. You'd better stay on Earth. After a heated exchange of words, Thea secured several military contracts and a promise to organize a visit to the Red Room laboratory for Quinn Group's scientific and practical division. She then packed the body in a large bag, left the Pentagon alone, and soared into the night sky. Back at the hotel, Diana was waiting. After dropping the body into her space ring and instructing the elk not to steal it, Thea and Diana began another round of competition. Thea leaped into the air, using a KGB fighting technique, her legs clamping around Diana's neck. Undeterred, Diana used a Sambo self-defense technique, clamping her legs around her head and sending her crashing to the ground. I won't lose, Thea's voice rang out, a little distorted, through her legs. My body can withstand far more than yours. You're doomed, Diana announced in advance, her victory declaration. Chapter 295 Honeymoon. The night was a relentless one, as the two tested each other. Diana's stamina was undeniable. With her warrior physique, she shouldn't have had much trouble dealing with Thea, an archer-turned-mage. However, Thea, after her baptism with the Yellow Lantern ring, had deepened her mental strength, and she gritted her teeth to persevere until Diana gave up. Amidst the intense trembling of her soul, they both reached new heights. Wake up, get up, Diana rocked Thea, who slept like a pig. 10 minutes passed before Thea, mentally drained, finally recovered and slowly sat up in bed. The night had consumed her physically and mentally. She'd essentially used up every drop of health and mana to defeat Diana, the massive boss with a long health bar. The gap between her strength and Diana's was immense. She had to go back and tell Damien if she had stolen his sword. Thea threw on a few hastily placed clothes and headed to the hotel rooftop to bask in the sun. Half an hour later, she unexpectedly noticed a slight increase in her mental strength. It was amazing. This wasn't mentioned in any spellbook. Doing something so unspeakable could actually increase one's spiritual power. Wonderful, truly powerful. For the safety of humanity and the peace of the universe, we must do this kind of thing more often, treat it as a social responsibility, and persevere with consistent quality and quantity over the long term. Refreshed, Thea ordered room service for breakfast, and the two of them devoured it. We'll be heading to OA later, just like a honeymoon, Thea announced the itinerary for the next few days with a domineering air. Such an outrageous travel plan would be too much for most people to handle. Fortunately, Diana was no ordinary person. She nodded and said, "I've never been to an alien planet before, so I'd like to go see for myself. Is the universe really that vast? Earth is just a planet in Sector 2814, Thea patted her chest. Don't worry, there aren't many in the entire universe who can defeat you. Diana, unaware that Thea was being sincere, thought she was complimenting her. Her heroic eyebrows rose involuntarily, and a happy smile graced her lips. As they were about to leave, they discovered something rather embarrassing. The room was disproportionately damp. The carpet and walls were covered in water stains, and the marks appeared fresh. Since their bodies were not mortal, the moisture naturally possessed its own special qualities. Left unchecked, some of it could persist for a long time. A bit embarrassed, Diana instinctively drew her Vulcan sword and attempted to reheat the crime scene. Thea quickly stopped her, calling her actions absurd. If the god of fire knew you were using his mighty sword for such a feat, he'd surely come out of his kingdom to kill you. Psychics or even a mixed-out warrior like Diana, decked out in divine armor, were helpless against this situation, but Thea's diverse range of methods proved invaluable. Water pump. 3 consecutive water pump spells were cast into the room, drying it out like an oven. A slightly murky ball of water was gathered into Thea's palm. What to do with this ball of water stumped the two. Diana dodged, afraid to meet her gaze. Thea was also perplexed. Both of them possessed divine power, and the energy in this ball of water was considerable. It would be embarrassing if a malicious individual used it to create a cyborg. The image of this indescribable ball of water being purified again and injected into a human, and then this enhanced being battling a clone made from Superman's hair and blood, was horrifying. For the safety of humanity, let's just pack it up. Thea pulled out a small bottle and poured the entire liquid into it. You, Diana nearly bit her tongue. Shouldn't this be flushed down the drain? Thea reasoned, stating that we couldn't be so selfish. With great power comes great responsibility. We have a duty and obligation to contribute to the safety of the Earth. This rambling reassurance barely dispelled Diana's concerns, and the two decided to recycle the water whenever they sparred in the future. This would give the bad guys a chance. After cleaning up the crime scene, they checked out and left. After reaching a deserted place and escaping the atmosphere, Thea opened a wormhole, and the two of them left the Milky Way. Of course, they wouldn't go directly to OA. Carrying a Binsu, worth just over $100, was a bit risky. A Green Lantern was no match for Diana in a one-on-one fight, but they outnumbered them. Hundreds of them pressed together, few in the modern universe could defeat them. Finding a planet with some signs of intelligent life, the two of them stopped. Thea worked on restoring a Binsu's body, making it at least appear human. Diana, idly, used her lasso to study intelligent life. After 2 hours of work, Thea wiped the sweat from her forehead. This Binsu looked much more intact. To make it look like he'd been killed by the parallax demon, Thea punched a large hole in the intact body. She had as much yellow fear energy as she needed, creating a perfectly realistic-looking wound. After returning the body to her interspatial ring, Thea turned to look for Diana. She found the woman in high spirits, having captured an animal resembling a cross between a rabbit and a dog, and was questioning her. Athena's blessed wisdom was truly well-deserved. After a brief conversation, Diana could actually speak a few words in the other's language. Diana was clearly delighted. Freed from the so-called mission of protecting Earth, she hadn't had a particularly happy time. Now, outside the Milky Way, the burden she carried vanished, and her spirits brightened considerably. The original plan to quickly reach OA was shelved. Thea had contacted Sinestro earlier, and upon learning that her old friend's remains had returned, he happily welcomed them to OA. Earth was relatively safe, and Star City was incredibly safe. Thea decided to skip the wormhole and take a leisurely spaceship journey. Diana protested her reluctance, but her heart remained loyal as she followed her on their journey. Thea's ring could translate all languages, and Diana's strength was enough to overwhelm even the most technologically advanced planets. The two of them leisurely made their way to OA via spaceship. There are warm and welcoming races, but there are also predatory cosmic bandits. This is Diana's chance to show off her prowess. She was a bit unsure when she first left Earth, but by the second month of her journey, her confidence was almost overflowing. There wasn't a single formidable force in this universe. But on a sinister planet, a group of creatures, seemingly less than half a meter tall, taught her a lesson. A massive, towering main gun, disguised as a mountain, charged without the two realizing it. Fortunately, Thea escaped through a wormhole in time. Otherwise the consequences would have been unpredictable. In the following operations, both of them restrained themselves considerably, finally arriving on OA 3 months after leaving Earth. Chapter 296 Lisa Draca. Naturally, it was Sinestro who greeted them. Welcome to OA. Sinestro was quite familiar with Thea, but he focused his attention on Diana. She exuded a heroic presence, brimming with impressive authority. She stood there like a sword, sharp, cold, and filled with a murderous aura. Sinestro, a little stunned, took a closer look. Without a lantern ring, without any technological equipment, this woman's inherent fighting spirit was already overflowing without even amplifying her emotions. Are Earthlings so terrifying? The two didn't fight, but based on his intuition, Sinestro felt he might not be able to defeat the dark-haired woman. Seeing Diana stunned the rebellious Sinestro, Thea was quite beautiful. She retrieved the Binsu's body from her space ring. She had found a crystal coffin on a planet she had passed by, and from the outside, it looked quite good. Sinestro gently stroked the coffin, still showing respect for his old friend, who had fought alongside him for so many years. He nodded in gratitude and led the two to the Green Lantern Corps cemetery. Upon learning of Binsur's burial, many Green Lanterns came to pay their respects. The Green Lantern Corps fought across the universe, and having their bodies recovered and buried after death was a truly remarkable luxury. Many expressed their gratitude to Thea for returning the remains. How was the training? Why did you say you weren't coming back to Earth? At the funeral, Thea spotted Hal Jordan, who was training on OA and would be returning to the burrow in a few days. Hal Jordan expressed frustration and a desire not to return to Earth, prompting Thea to ask. Hal Jordan of the original Time and Space had returned to Earth, assuming he was a superhero, but with Thea's involvement, several heroes emerged, and his skills were nothing compared to his own. In his mind, Earth was perfectly safe, and he preferred not to cause any trouble. After a few awkward words of explanation to Thea, and just as he was about to leave, Sinestro returned, a hint of sadness in his eyes. While his relationship with Thea wasn't exactly friendly, it wasn't the same stiff attitude he'd initially had. You're definitely not just returning the body, are you? What else? Sinestro had gotten to know the Earthwoman. Unlike Hal Jordan, who'd been trained by him, Hal was a simple child, without a clear conscience. Thea, on the other hand, was completely different. She wouldn't do anything without a benefit. It had to be said that Sinestro's guess about Thea's intentions was spot on. Originally, he'd only intended to befriend the Green Lantern Corps, but meeting Boston Brand a few days ago had slightly changed her mind. Look, I found someone quite interesting the other day who I think would be a good fit for the Yellow Lantern Corps. Isn't that the woman next to you? Sinestro squinted at Diana. Someone so powerful even without a lantern ring couldn't be allowed into the Corps, otherwise, who would be the leader? He quickly pondered what excuse to use to refuse. How could Thea let Diana wear a yellow lantern? She flatly refused. No, she's my lover, not the Corps. Hearing it wasn't Diana, Sinestro breathed a sigh of relief, his expression softening considerably. Is he from Earth? Thea thought for a moment before replying. He was from Earth in his lifetime. I don't know where he's from now. Was he from Earth in his lifetime? Sinestro's mind was filled with questions. He checked the language translator on the lantern ring to make sure it translated correctly. What did this mean? Where is he? Can I see? Thea scratched her head. He's actually here, you just can't see him. I can't see him. Sinestro had seen many enemies capable of invisibility over his years fighting for the Green Lantern Corps, but no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't see any nearby. However, his powerful mental power did detect a cold, sinister energy to his right. "Is it here?" Sinestro pointed to the spot he sensed. Thea's affirmative answer surprised him greatly. Such a powerful invisibility ability could cause immense destructive power. 2 weeks ago, Thea returned to Earth to buy food and take care of some matters in Star City because Diana wasn't used to the alien cuisine. Before leaving, Thea received an email from the dead man. Upon closer inspection, Thea discovered a fragment of her own psychic power deep within his soul. Unsurprisingly, it was caused by the fear spell she'd used. This situation was a bit like the master recognition phenomenon in novels. A single thought could completely annihilate him. So, Thea decided to recruit him as a thug. As for his search for meaning, Thea suggested becoming a superhero. If he wanted a visible form, how about this yellow lantern ring? Just put it on and you'll materialize, and it's only 998. After some deception, she gave Boston Brand the codename Dead Man, placed it in the space ring, and brought him to OA. Sinestro, without divine power or magic, could actually sense the presence of the dead through his powerful psychic powers. She was impressed. "Well, impressive, huh? Let's have him serve the Yellow Lantern Corps," Thea said calmly. Sinestro hesitated. Honestly, the dead must have powerful abilities. If Thea hadn't introduced him, Sinestro would have agreed immediately. But he had no good reason to refuse. It would be a shame to give away such a powerful ability. Sinestro's charismatic nature quickly took over. "Okay, I agree. Come back to my quarters with me. I've recently recruited a subordinate. Let me introduce you to him." Sinestro didn't know about the soul fragments. He believed he could subjugate the dead with his own brilliance. The group flew towards his quarters. "Is there someone here?" Hal Jordan, who had been about to leave, followed suit. But he couldn't see anyone around, and a chill ran down his spine. He asked Thea, hoping to see the excitement. "Yes, his name is Boston Brand. He passed away a few months ago while performing a trapeze act. He's currently in a state between life and death." Hal Jordan stared at Thea with his mouth wide open. His initial confusion had only intensified. Could such a magical thing exist on our planet? This was almost beyond his imagination. In just a few months, he had gone from pilot to space warrior. His worldview had been shattered several times, but he realized it wasn't shattered enough. He had to shatter it further. The chatterbox Hal Jordan stagnated. Without him to liven things up, the rest of the group fell silent. Thea soon met Sinestro's new subordinate. "I understand fear like no one else. I'm Lisa Draca, a blue-skinned woman, wearing only a few strips of cloth," introduced herself to the group. Chapter 297 The First Battle of the Dead. This blue-skinned female alien, known for her unparalleled understanding of fear, held Sinestro in high esteem. Her eyes radiated adoration and affection, barely concealed, as if Sinestro were a deity, their gaze constantly lingering around him. Thea didn't know much about Lisa Draca, but she remembered her as a general in the original Yellow Lantern Corps, responsible for training new recruits. She was incredibly loyal to Sinestro, possessing the Book of Parallax in her original time. She boasted a powerful ability capable of simultaneously taking on 3 Green Lanterns. Unfortunately, she met her end before she could achieve her goal. She encountered the ingenious Hal Jordan and his men, and instead of showing off, she was instead savaged, bound, and dragged away. In short, she possessed some strength and a broad vision, but she underestimated her own abilities. Lisa Draca, born from fear, hails from the Duraco Blue Cluster. She possesses the ability to sense others' fear. "I'm very optimistic about her abilities," Sinestro stated bluntly. Thea nodded in approval. While the woman was a bit arrogant, she was quite capable. If she weren't matched against those cheaters, she'd be a minor boss. She understood Sinestro's intentions and summoned the Parallax Book. The giant golden book appeared before everyone's eyes, evoking varying reactions. Both Thea and Sinestro possessed mastery over fear, and the book's power had no effect on them. Diana felt a slight discomfort, but quickly resisted. The dead's mental state differed from that of ordinary people. He possessed a fragment of Thea's mind, making him immune to the Parallax Book's power. Lisa Draca's claim to an unparalleled understanding of fear was truly justified. Her face was grim, and she bit her lip hard, but she managed to hold on and not embarrass her boss, Sinestro. Hal Jordan, a spectator, was in dire straits. Countless terrifying images replayed in his mind, including over a dozen from his father's plane crash as a child. The intense fear gnawed at his central nervous system, and if he couldn't hold on, he'd be reduced to a fool in a flash. Thea was horrified. After all, they were fellow Earthlings. She couldn't just stand by and watch him die in such an inexplicable way. If the Lantern Ring members could only watch, holding on if possible, then they'd be dragged away if they couldn't. Her spells had previously been useless in such situations, but now, having mastered the emotion of fear, she cast a modified version of the fear resistance spell on him. Hal Jordan finally regained consciousness, gasping for breath and sprawling on the ground, unable to stand. She observed Lisa Draca's expression. This woman, who had always been the boss and Sinestro the second in command, no longer wore her dismissive demeanor in front of Thea, who held the parallax book. She bowed her head slightly in a gesture of humility. Not bad. I agreed to her joining the Yellow Lantern Corps. This was a tacit understanding between her and Sinestro. They were both very cautious about recruiting new members. Without Sinestro, there would be no new Yellow Lantern rings, and without Thea, she couldn't become a full member. It just so happened that they both had ideas about the future of the Yellow Lantern Corps, a conclusion evident from the fact that they found new members almost simultaneously. Does your book have any new functions? Sinestro extracted a ball of yellow energy. A ball much larger than when he first saw it, sucking the parallax demon's fear into it. Yes. Any intelligent being who touches or looks at the parallax book will be struck by fear. Even if they successfully overcome the fear pressure, their speed will be greatly reduced. Conquering fear speeds up, while being affected by it slows down. Thea explained the power of her parallax book to Sinestro, the original recipient of the Yellow Lantern rings, and the book had no effect on him at all. This book has significant limitations, but if used skillfully, it can yield significant results. Thea's first thought was of those weak-willed speedsters who spent their days running around the mountains like wild donkeys. This book would be the perfect countermeasure for them. After learning about the Book of Parallax's power, Sinestro, true to his word, lowered his head to craft the lantern ring and, half-consciously, said, "How about having your new subordinates fight mine?" This guy was incredibly competitive, always eager to challenge. Thea had no objection, eager to see the true power of the dead, so she nodded immediately. "Yes, as you wish." Upon hearing that she was being asked to step out, Lisa Draca showed no fear. She stood alone in the middle of the field and waited for nearly half a minute, completely bewildered. Didn't we say we were going to fight? Where are the people? Who wants to fight me? Is this person even here? In reality, the dead had already entered the field, but hadn't made the first move, seeing that she wasn't moving. Sinestro's production of the lantern ring slowed noticeably as he concentrated on sensing the dead's location. He felt that such an invisible enemy was a formidable threat. Even if he possessed earth-shattering power, it was useless if he couldn't strike his opponent. Facing an unknown, invisible foe, fear would strike fear in everyone. Sinestro couldn't help but glance at Thea. The person she had chosen truly lived up to the Yellow Lantern principle, only the dead could instill fear in the enemy. Was she fighting an invisible person? Lisa Draca saw the serious expression on her boss Sinestro's face and knew he was serious. The enemy had already entered the arena, she just couldn't see them. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't detect anything unusual. She glanced left and right, wary of the enemy's attack, her expression no longer as calm as it had been at first. Although she hadn't yet donned the Yellow Lantern ring, her attraction to Sinestro wasn't simply due to her courage, she had some skill. Lisa Draca's expression became utterly sinister, veins bulging on her forehead, the whites of her eyes rolled back, and heavy gasps escaped her lips. She scanned her surroundings, then suddenly, she wrapped her fist in her psychic energy and delivered a punch to the side. As Thea and Diana watched, the dead man, sent flying over 2 meters, rubbed his chin, and hovered in midair, seemingly in disbelief. Sinestro looked smug, and Thea asked, "What abilities does your subordinate have?" "I think her eyes are strange." Thea, whose livelihood depended on her vision, was very sensitive to such abilities. Lisa Draca has some foresight abilities, but unfortunately, they are limited. Currently, she can only predict events related to herself within a small area and for a short period of time. Since Sinestro had asked her to use them, he had no intention of concealing them. In some ways, Thea's relationship with him was even closer than his with the Green Lantern Corps, so there was no need to conceal such obvious abilities. Thea nodded and scoffed at Sinestro's so-called foresight of the future. Lisa Draca's ability could only be considered prediction at best, and was still a long way from foresight. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 298 Yellow Lantern Caller. Not only was there a disparity in ability, but even this low-level prediction was a tremendous strain on a mortal's body. Lisa Draca looked as if she was about to vomit her internal organs, and one could tell this move was severely draining her energy and even her lifespan. Although she was Sinestro's subordinate, she couldn't let her exhaust her energy like this. Thea signaled the dead man to attack directly, deciding the outcome in a single move. The dead man, receiving her instruction, chuckled and, with a high dive, dove into Lisa Draca's body. Sinestro immediately noticed something unusual. Thea granted him a magical eye, allowing him to see the struggle between the dead man and Lisa Draca. What's this? Sinestro knew that Thea had abilities beyond the lantern ring, so he wasn't surprised. What surprised him was the dead man, who was halfway inside, halfway ready to push back. With a pale face, dark circles under his eyes, and wearing a bright red bodysuit, he half peeked out from behind the blue-skinned Lisa Draca. At first glance, he might have mistaken him for a deformed individual. Sinestro could see thanks to Thea's magic. Lisa Draca, a living alien, couldn't use magic. She could only sense something desperately burrowing into her. She knew it wasn't a good thing, so she naturally tried her best to stop it. But the dead man's move was incredibly powerful. It wouldn't have any effect on a normal person like Nightwing, but Batman's willpower was unparalleled. Though he was quickly driven out, he had been possessed briefly for a few seconds. Now, facing Lisa Draca, whose willpower wasn't even Batman's, his psychic nature quickly overwhelmed her defenseless soul, completing the initial possession. This ability? How bizarre! The experienced Sinestro was astonished. Such an unstoppable ability, without any combat skills or manifestation, but simply taking over, even he couldn't immediately devise a countermeasure. Sensing his wariness, Thea dispelled his concerns. The dead's trick is amazing against ordinary people, but it's short-lived against those with strong will. As she finished her words, the dead possessing Lisa Draca staggered a few steps. This woman is resisting frantically. Thea, eager to see just how far the dead could take control, didn't speak up to stop him. Hal Jordan, like a fool, watched Lisa Draca's body tremble desperately. Not wanting him to embarrass the Earthlings, Thea also cast a magical eye on him. All four of the people in the arena could now see the dead. Lisa Draca couldn't see it, but she knew it best, so it didn't matter whether she saw it or not. She exerted all her strength to expel the dead from her body. A long stalemate ensued. The dead's spirit was far superior to that of an ordinary human soul, but Lisa Draca, having been favored by Sinestro, possessed an equally strong will. The mental clash between the two was unfavorable to her, but because it was her body, it had constant replenishment, giving her a natural advantage. As the battle dragged on, the remaining powerless dead were finally squeezed out. He was a rootless source, consuming only his own spirit. Similarly, Lisa Draca was exhausted, nearly collapsing. She could no longer maintain any sense of foresight, and beads of sweat streamed down her blue skin. So, with a strong will, they can be driven out. Sinestro felt relieved upon seeing this. Lisa Draca's willpower was a baby's compared to his. If she could do it, he could do it too. However, the dead were indeed extraordinary, as anyone with a discerning eye could see. Sinestro was delighted to have such a person join the Yellow Lantern Corps. Shortly after, the third and fourth lantern rings were completed, and Thea motioned for Lisa Draca to come first. The entire process was identical to previous ones, the only notable difference being that Lisa Draca recited the same oath that Sinestro had recited that day. After registering the person's name in the Parallax book, Lisa Draca went off alone to receive the knowledge of the lantern rings. The fourth lantern ring and the dead man's pairing encountered a minor problem. The ring's power was truly impressive, it ignored the dead man's invisibility, but something went wrong when it came to locating intelligent life. The ring circled him twice, unable to determine the life form's origins. It could only mumble, "Intelligent life locked on." From Boston Brand. You possess the power to inflict immense fear upon others. Welcome to the Yellow Lantern Corps. Thea felt a little amused at this. If the ring were human, it would have pounded its head against a wall upon encountering a once-in-a-millennium creature like the dead man. The dead man's oath mirrored Thea's own, causing Thea and Sinestro to exchange glances and then look away. The dead man, wearing the yellow ring, immediately mastered his materialization ability, manifesting a real person who bore a 3/4 resemblance to his former self. While the all-yellow color was a bit inconsistent with his aesthetic, after living as a ghost for so long, being visible to others was a blessing beyond measure. The small hue of color was insignificant. The lantern ring served him more as a reminder of what it was like to be human, and to use fear to dismantle resistance when possessing another's body. The incarnated dead fumbled about, seemingly delighting in the ability to touch objects. Hal Jordan was initially intimidated by him, but after a few words, they found a surprising rapport. Both had initially acted like assholes, but later repented and embraced heroic character. Their conversations ranged from women to guns to the future, becoming increasingly close, practically sworn brothers. Thea spent 3 days on OA, meeting Abin Su's sister and Sinestro's wife, Arlene Su, Sinestro's daughter, Soranik Natu, and Abin Su's son, Amin Su. Receiving countless thanks, Thea chatted with Diana and several guardians for a while, only to find it was time to return to Earth after such a long absence. After saying goodbye one by one, she and Hal Jordan reached the border of Sector 2814. Hal Jordan was now filled with a sense of mission, as if his sector was threatened by a powerful demon every day. He was determined to patrol it and eliminate all potential threats before returning to Earth. Despite such a stubborn person, Thea didn't bother to pay attention to him. She couldn't tell him that most of the universe's most dangerous demons were on Earth. Other planets were truly safe. If you took care of Earth, the entire universe would be saved. Since Thea didn't have any casualties for the time being, and seeing that they had a good relationship, she asked him and Hal Jordan to first fight crime and protect the people in the nearby star system. After all, the lantern ring had the ability to communicate regardless of distance, so they could contact each other for any matter. Landing in Europe with Diana, they retraced their old route, comparing memories and stopping along the way. It was time for them to part ways temporarily. "I'll see you next week," Thea said generously. "Okay, I'll wait for you." Diana's smile was still so beautiful, clear, without a trace of impurities. The two kissed each other goodbye, one heading west and the other heading south. Chapter 299 Central City Advanced Technology Laboratory. Upon returning to Star City, Thea was quickly besieged by numerous tasks, the most pressing of which was increasing cooperation with the military. Both sides exchanged information and tested each other, each obtaining what they needed. The military believed they could rely on Thea, a child of a government official on their side, to contain the growing number of unidentified superheroes. Needing their tacit approval, Thea cultivated a vast network of connections within the upper echelons of society, and the two sides hit it off. The Quinn Corporation secured a massive military contract, effectively boosting its previously tepid reputation and effortlessly securing the task of rebuilding Coast City. In return, Thea accepted the title of Special Affairs Advisor to the military, promising to assist the military with limited difficulties. Although Diana had been found, and the two occasionally met on weekends for physical sparring, the temple construction project remained unabated. After all, it was a commission from the goddess of night, and both reputational and practical considerations warranted its continued development. Fortunately, this matter was not a small one, but it was certainly not a big one. With the tacit approval of numerous lobbyists and the military, the government finally formally submitted a request for comment to Turkey. Of course, the so-called request was little more than an order, so the Turkish side dared not object. Amidst widespread opposition, several joint construction teams entered the temple site and began preliminary surveying. Damien's plan to steal the sword remained unsettled, but Barbara and Laurel had already left Star City, and their small team was rapidly expanding. Barbara eventually discovered the stalker Tommy, and upon learning that Laurel was also pursuing superheroes, Tommy, both delighted and worried, shamelessly infiltrated a previously all-female birds of prey. Soon after, they rescued Helena, who was being hunted by her biological father. They bravely fought off the pursuing Italian mafia. Helena, whose boyfriend had been murdered by her father, was left bewildered and took the codename Hunter to join the team. Worried about them, Thea flew to Gotham overnight. She saw how well the team worked together. Barbara and Laurel handled melee combat, while Tommy and Helena handled ranged combat. Barbara, with her greatest skill and experience, naturally took over as leader, officially launching the Birds of Prey. For a moment, they seemed poised to take over as Batman's defenders of Gotham. With everything on track, Thea began to reflect on her own enhancements. She now had ample offensive tools, and with the help of her lantern ring, she was incredibly fast. Her only concern lay with her defense. The gods of forging and forging, renowned for their forging of divine weapons, were few and far between, willing to expend their divine power on armor. After much deliberation, Thea concluded that she had no choice but to build this armor herself. However, using modern scientific knowledge to create armor suited to future combat, even with the Atom's atomic suit as a reference, the workload was immense, requiring vast amounts of data. The previous AI project was once again brought to the forefront. Whether it was armor production or not, AI would provide comprehensive assistance with her enhancements. Originally, Thea had planned to find several planets with artificial intelligence, assuming there were so many of them. However, she was about to give up on the high-tech labs in Central City, as they were too crowded with attention. However, after traveling the universe, she discovered that no planet, regardless of technological level, possessed any artificial intelligence. It wasn't until she brainwashed the leadership of one planet that she learned that, due to the perceived threat posed by Brainiac, a level 12 AI robot, the high-tech planets had formed an alliance, agreeing to monitor each other and abandon AI development. Earth, however, was considered too low-level and unimportant. In other words, the only AI that could help Thea and that she could obtain was the original Gideon, created by Reverse Flash, a 25th century time traveler, in Central City. Hello, Dr. Snow, I'm Thea Quinn. Thank you for your guidance. After 6 months of study, Thea successfully earned her Princeton diploma. Now, she could finally avoid the awkwardness of high school graduation when greeting people. After all, she graduated from an Ivy League school, so she could secure a decent job. Caitlin Snow's graduate program wasn't a big deal. At just 28, Caitlin, while qualified to supervise graduate students, lacked experience. Graduates from prestigious universities looked down on her, while those from less prestigious institutions were also looked down upon by her. She hadn't properly supervised a student in years. Caitlin Snow's mother ran a sizable pharmaceutical company and knew Moira. With her connections, and Thea's good grades and her status as a woman, she had no reason to refuse. The two met briefly at a coffee shop, and it was clear that Caitlin Snow lacked any aura. She seemed timid and easily bullied. It's hard to imagine her personality changing dramatically, becoming the supervillain Killer Frost. The elders of both parties knew each other, and since they were close in age, they treated each other like sisters. The goal was to foster a closer relationship, so Thea peppered them with questions. Caitlin Snow's knowledge of biochemistry was impressive, and the fact that she was chosen by the Reverse Flash to join a cutting-edge laboratory showed she had real talent. Though the discussion was only general, it resolved many of Thea's concerns about the Atom suit. She felt her time was well spent, while Caitlin was impressed by her eagerness to learn despite being a billionaire. It was safe to say both parties were very satisfied with their initial encounter. Less than a month after studying with Caitlin Snow, Thea finally had the doors of the cutting-edge technology lab she had longed for. Unlike the labs of later times, where only a few people occupied the space, this one was bustling with activity, with doctors in white coats and thick, bottle-bottomed glasses frequently engaged in loud discussions. Many of the leading figures in their fields ignored the newcomer, Caitlin Snow. And Thea, standing behind her, was even more ignored. They were solely focused on academic achievements, and their beauty made them look down on her. She was so pretty, she definitely wasn't here for research. Only a few young interns stole glances at Thea, but they didn't dare to look any further. Welcome, Dr. Snow, and welcome to our school, Miss Quinn. The Reverse Flash, disguised as Professor Harrison Wells, greeted the two. Reverse Flash plays the role of a middle-aged man with elegant manners and classes, and he looks like a well-educated scholar. His facial expressions, language, movements, gestures, etc. are flawless. Everyone who has talked to him does not know that the original Professor Harrison Wells is dead and has been replaced by a time traveler from 500 years later. Chapter 300 Being Targeted. Thea didn't hide her identity. Being secretive only aroused suspicion. She was forthright. Those who knew her identity would know, and those who shouldn't know would never know. The Quinn Group had also donated funds to the cutting-edge technology laboratory. She spoke with equal grace and politeness. Dr. Wells, your place truly opened my eyes. I'm honored to be able to study here." Her tone was normal but tinged with a hint of pride, which was the intended meaning. While some young wealthy people in Europe and America, like Ray Palmer the Atom, were gifted and dedicated to learning, the majority were uneducated and looked down upon. Oliver and Tommy's previous behavior was a prime example of this. The elegant Harrison Wells paid no mind to her slight arrogance. He smiled warmly. "I hope your visit was worthwhile. Our laboratory is excellent." He shook hands with both men and concluded the conversation. He had a lot of work to do, and the fact that he was able to find time to meet them was, in part, due to Thea's true identity. After the lab director personally met with the two, they had to get back to work. The president's daughter couldn't just sit there idle. Caitlin Snow was assigned to the biology group, led by an elderly African-American spinster. Seeing their appearance, she snorted. Thea was dressed normally today, but it was hard not to notice her appearance. Caitlin was a bit dogmatic, strictly adhering to workplace rules. She even arrived at the lab in a tight skirt and stilettos. Add to that her easygoing appearance, and how could the spinster hit it off immediately? "From today on, this place is your responsibility." The spinster, who looked like Zubaji's second aunt, led the two to the northwest corner of the lab, pointed to a row of bungalows, and then swayed her massive hips and walked away. The two looked at each other. Caitlin was no fool. If she didn't feel like she was being targeted like this, then something was wrong. But she didn't know where she had offended anyone, and for a moment, she bit her lip in confusion. Thea didn't care. This society judges people by appearances, and superficial people are everywhere. Getting angry is a waste of time. Let's go in and take a look." Thea wasn't afraid at all. Even if there was an alien teleportation array inside, she could fly back on her own. She dragged Caitlin inside, and someone who didn't know her would mistake her for a teacher and Caitlin for a student. The pungent odor nearly knocked them over as soon as they entered the room. Damn it. Thea gritted her teeth and looked at the hundreds of cages and the apes inside. A hint of fear escaped her anger, and the previously noisy apes miraculously quieted down, some even making teeth chatter. "Let me raise apes here." Thea struggled to calm herself, terrified that a red lantern ring would fly in from the depths of space. That would be a scene of chaos. In her heart, she tried to tell herself not to get angry, saying that anger damages the liver and all sorts of other things. The last person to infuriate her to this degree was Senator Hammond of Seaside City, but he was still a powerful figure, so this old African-American spinster was nothing. Their original plan was to acquire the AI and then flee, but now the first step had gone awry. Their appearance had drawn hostility, and being sent so far from the lab, while this experience earned Caitlin sympathy among the male researchers, it had done nothing for Thea. Seeing Caitlin still looking dazed, Thea, accustomed to giving orders, didn't wait for her to recover before calling out, "Anyone? Who's in charge here?" It was impossible for the two of them to care for hundreds of gorillas. They must have dedicated keepers, and the primary focus was still Caitlin's specialty, biochemistry research. One to the east, two to the west, and soon 7 people stood before Thea. "Are you just a few? My name is Thea Quinn, and the person next to me is Dr. Caitlin Snow, the new doctor who's taken over here. If you need anything, just come to us. Otherwise, just go about your business." Thea introduced herself with a casual air. She wouldn't be intimidated by even 7, let alone 70,000 people. Of the 7, 3 were women and 4 were men, all young and childish. The young man in the lead wanted to say that the apes were being aggressive and asked if they should request sedatives from the lab, but when the words reached his lips, he noticed the silence. He quickly turned around and saw that all the apes were staying still, some even lying face down on the ground. What the hell was going on? Was there any need to request sedatives when they were so quiet? He glanced back at the stunning Thea, swallowing his words to avoid appearing foolish. Putting on what he considered his most charming smile, he explained the management situation to the two. Thea was content to listen. She was obsessed with artificial intelligence. The life and death of a few apes was none of her business. If she gets angry, she will dare to lock up Reverse Flash with the apes. Caitlin listened very carefully, asked questions from time to time, and took special notes. The two followed the young man inside. Thea casually picked up a bunch of bananas from the table and broke off one to throw in any ape she liked. Although she had not practiced art specifically, the basic properties were there. The banana drew a beautiful arc and passed through the gap in the iron cage. The young man watched as a banana hit the ape's head with a bang. The apes in the past would have been furious, but today they were all very honest. Some of the ones who were beaten even looked at Thea with a flattering look. Damn it. The young man felt that this scene was a bit contrary to his previous experience in raising apes. Are these apes all mean? They wouldn't move when led, and they were backsliding. She'd been so kind to them, yet they bared their teeth at her for no reason. Now, Thea casually threw bananas, sending several of the young gorillas reeling. None dared to resist, and the young man felt he'd found a secret to keeping them. Unaware that her casual action had set a bad precedent for a promising young man who aspired to be the world's best keeper, Thea casually walked past a row of seemingly young gorillas. Her powerful visual memory allowed her to memorize the names of several gorillas on the signs, even without paying close attention. Henry Jared Cohen. She took 2 steps forward before realizing what she was seeing. She paused, returning to the sign marked Grud, gazing at the skinny, shriveled, listless gorilla inside. Growd. Thea was incredulous. This was the Flash's nemesis, a highly intelligent gorilla with telepathy and mind control. This guy's future achievements could surpass 90% of Earth's villains, but is he really the gorilla I know? I've written 300 chapters without realizing it. I even admire myself. Xia kicked the gorilla Grod and asked for votes. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.